this. So, go to shaded dunes in the background for now. Are you watching Twitch? Then you'll need to mute one of them. mute Twitch. Yeah, Nick, it's the same old story. I'm gonna have to sit here and try to figure out what's going on with Discord. It's like every other guest, Discord audio stops working. So you guys will have to bear with me while I try to figure out exactly why that is it. I thought the one thing that was recommended, I even went in and looked, and in terms of applications taking control over the device, like I just went in here. Hey, Pattis. Went into sound settings. The device properties. Additional device properties. Advanced. Allow applications to take over control of this device. Give exclusive mode. Applications priority. Yeah, I don't know. Ham, say something. Nope, they can't hear you. Okay. It did not work. Fly, okay. Boom. We were trying to fix this before coming on, and it was just eating in time, so I figured it'd probably be quicker just to start the stream and then ask you guys if you can figure it out for me. So I'll go back into Streamlabs and go into general. Here, no audio. What about now, Ham?
Let's see. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, they can hear you now.
Fantastic.
But they can't, and I think that's fine for now. I don't think they're not gonna have this wonderful Spelljammer music in the background. But now I'll switch back over. Cool, you guys can hear them, right? I'm assuming you can hear them.
Give us a thumbs up if you can hear us.
Cool.
Fantabulous.
Phantasmic. Let me actually go into hit play. Cool. Let me look at something while I'm in Streamlabs. All right. So in audio, I can look, and I've got headset, earphone, Arcus Pro, blah blah blah. Is this working? It's working about the way things tend to work here. Now, Ham, if you say something, does it come in double? No, it doesn't.
Nope, it does not.
What about if you say it now?
Try that.
Yeah. Okay. And then let's go over to properties for this beast. I see. Okay, I see the difference there as well. All right, so we've done that. Now if I hit this and I hit play. All right, so in theory, that's YouTube music in the background. Do you guys hear YouTube music? Oh, it'd help if I was actually looking at you. I was looking at YouTube. It's like, do you hear YouTube music, YouTube? And it's funny because I was not only looking at YouTube. I was looking at this lady on. Oh, I was looking at this lady on YouTube when I was asking the question. So, super professional operation we have here. Okay. Cool. So now we have some background sound. So when we're not talking right now, then it's fine. It's not so quiet. Oh, that broke. Cool. Yeah, Ryan. Way to come in here and pick on me. Let's see what's going on, dude. It's not like I'm trying new things. I'm trying streaming for the first time. I don't even have the excuse of like not having. It's been over a year and I don't have my shit together. It's actually like we've got folks that have been here for 16 months, 17 months. So it's creeping up on like 2 years of streaming, and I still. Oh, and also using Unity. Part of the charm. That's our. Yeah, we're folksy in that way. Hi, Jasmine. Do you need something, or are you just hanging out? Okay, cool. We're figuring it out. I'm also killing time a little bit. I'm letting the crowd build up before we get going, Ham, so that more people will see you. Oh, I forgot. There's a VOD here too. So if you've been watching the VOD for the last 7 minutes, I apologize. Just if you get to this point, you now know that you probably should just fast forward to this point, or actually to a point somewhere in the future where this is all starting to work. So you're in the middle of your experience. If you had ESP, you would have guessed 7 minutes ago to just skip these 7 minutes, but you don't. But I'm giving you a hint. You can probably skip the next 7 minutes. Unless you're kind of in like a weird memento sort of situation where you're going to be working backwards.
LORETIME.
Did you guys hear that alert go off? Cryptini. Thank you for 11 months. Ham's covering up the alert box a little bit. Which, that's fine. We'll turn the alert box off too. All right, so we're in game. We'll maximize it. We'll walk. You did hear the alert? Okay, good, because I didn't, because my audio settings are still not where they need to be. One day when we're a professional organization, we'll have all of this stuff handled by somebody.
I think I don't know how this looks on your screen, but to me, it's like the little screen that that I'm on almost obstructs 25%.
It does, but I wanted people to be able to see you. They haven't seen you before, and then you've got this beautiful background, and I wanted them to be able to read. I was gonna make it so big that they could actually read what all these wonderful books are. Never change, Ryan. I'm pretty sure. Safe bet. I'm not gonna be able to pull off any changes. It's almost 47 years into this weird ass scenario called my life, and yeah. Radagar. Thank you for 7 months. Though I feel like we have been. It's been mutual, Radagar. I feel like we have been givers as well. All of the wonderful discussion in Discord. Okay, so I have no idea how loud the music is. Let me know if the music. It showed 6 months. just 7 for me. Whoa, subscribe for 7 months. And then you said, oh, and you said 6 months. Okay, I can't hear what you say though, because of the audio problems you're probably aware of by now. Cool, man. So, I think we're kind of good. How's the music sound? Do I need to turn it down?
To be fair, I can't hear it at all. I don't know if anybody else can.
You can't hear it, but you've also turned off your Twitch sound.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. This is why I'm not on the tech team. That's a fair point. This is why I'm not on the tech team.
Now you've turned it back on because I can hear you. Oh my god, did you feed the dog fish? Oh my god, I was wondering. I was like, holy shit, that's horrific. Okay. We'll probably, I don't know. We may even save this VOD, Ham, but what I'll do is I'll just cut the last 14 minutes starting in 3 minutes. Because 7 minutes ago I said 7 minutes. Well, not actually 7 minutes ago. I think it was 4 minutes ago. And thus we need another 3 minutes so that the people that leaped forward 7 minutes, because they took my advice 7 minutes ago. Well, 4 minutes ago. Would then actually land on that time frame. Dog fart or something? No. Benares, my wife gave the dog it's like a dried fish skin treat, and it's real bad. Hype train just started. Oh guys, wouldn't it be cool if the hype train actually did something, Twitch? Imagine that. It's like I feel like they have like a, does it do something? I'm being mean, and I just don't even realize the glory of Twitch's hype train design. But it just feels like if maybe they'd done a little bit more with hype train, then everybody would actually get more hype. I don't know. They give you an emote or something, right? There's a emote. Yeah. And it's not even like hype train emotes. Do I get to set the hype train emotes? Because they've got a lot of like conditions for you to be able to get emote variety and flexibility. I don't want to be a partner. So what if they gave me the ability to implement my own hype train emote? And that was the only time you guys ever got to see those hype train emotes. And so you're pretty excited because my emote selection was on point. Maybe you even participated in helping design the emotes, right? So now you're invested. And then no, it's just that. Just think about how many more subs, gifts, or bits they could get to that next level. Cool. All right. So it's all sorts of dark. Ham, you know what? While I continue to run towards the zone line and probably zone to desktop, knowing my luck, but then go back in. Editor Sebas! Thank you for 4 months. Good to see you. We're going to kick this thing off in a minute. It's like, if I look at Twitch right now, it's got a big banner. I don't know if you guys are seeing this as well. It's got a big banner. It's dropping confetti. It tells me that level 1's completed after the word hype in all caps with like 12 Ys goes zooming past my screen. Did you guys see any of that?
Yep, I see it.
Yeah, if you see all that, I mean, I guess that's pretty exciting. Okay. Cool, dude. So, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do this like an interview or anything, so don't sweat it, Ham. I played up extra silliness to sort of help you ease in and feel more relaxed. We've had no audio problems. I did all of this the last 14 minutes and 24 seconds just to make you feel comfortable. So now that you don't have to, because we were talking about getting Ham into streaming as well, because I think he's going to be a great streamer. And, you know, he's like, I don't know, it's, you know, there may be like a learning curve. I'm like, oh, there's no learning curve. You just push a button, everything works.
Here we are 15 minutes later.
15 minutes later, it's still like, I'm still not 100% sure that things are working. So, but yeah, no offense, Ham, but usually I get super nervous if it's an interview or whatever, because like you got to set all this shit up. It's usually somebody's morning. They've got a limited amount of time. Haven't talked to him in, 15 years or whatever, all this stuff. and then I'm just fingers crossed nothing breaks. You're on the team. We see each other all the time. If things crash or whatever, if anything, if you freeze up or whatever happens, then we'll just pick up where you left off. This is us just hanging out. So Jaded June? Yeah. Did that work? Nah. I'm not zoning. The zone line didn't work for me. I'm gonna log into a different tune. Alright, so one more minute, Hammond, then. Well, I keep saying like we're gonna actually start. Let's just start talking. There's something up with the server? Okay. Well, I'll wait then. So Ham. Everybody that's here, meet Ham. Ham has been around for a while now, and he's just been behind the scenes, and so it seemed like it'd be a good time for you to meet Ham, and then we could get a little bit of background on Ham and talk about the process. Hey, is my audio clipping? I did a video for the team the other day, yesterday or whatever, and I noticed all my S's were clipping. I tried to turn down the noise gate some. None of my words sound weird, especially words that begin or end with S. Okay. Hey, Nicodemus. Hey, you lovely Piflet, you. The person in the corner is Ham.
Hello, Piflet. Hello, everybody, actually.
Okay, Ham. Let's get going, man. Enough dilly-dallying.
Dive right in.
All right. Who are you? Why are you here? Talk to people. Tell us about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Hamad al-Najjar. My friends call me Ham for short. And what I do basically is I'm kind of working on the lore, a little bit of the lore on M&M, and actually my original role, and it still is my role, I guess, in a way, is to do some illustration work as well for the game. So my background is not actually in MMOs, funnily enough. I've been a tabletop gamer for the better part of the last 35 plus years, actually. And funnily enough, I've gotten to a stage where I can actually officially say I've been running tabletop and designing tabletop games longer than some of my players have been alive. So it's an odd claim to make, I suppose.
I would say quite a few.
But yeah, other than that, basically, like I joined the M&M team about just a little less than a year ago, and yeah, we've just sort of been plugging away, sort of trying to contribute what I know in terms of game design as pertains to tabletop games, and sharing that with the team here and seeing if we can, make use of it in the MMO context. So I'm a learner as much as a contributor on this project, I guess I would say.
Yeah, I mean, well, we're both learning. I think I've mentioned a couple times now. Definitely on the team side. I'm not sure what I've said in chat, but so we've been working pretty steady, like putting in some pretty long sessions, like 4 or 5 hour sessions. A few a week. The last few weeks, especially, last few weeks, and taking lore that we've been developing for the last year, and it's like stuff that Ham, when you first got on the team, you were writing some stuff, and stuff Bunny and I have been writing, and like we've just got a variety of some stuff kind of fleshed out in detail, a lot of ideas, and then some maybe things like timelines that we've reworked and all of that, and so it's been this nice collection of pieces that helped us kind of visualize a world and a history, but we've started putting them through some frameworks and sort of filters that Ham introduced me to, that are, to be honest with you, in the entirety of my design career or game development career, I haven't really I haven't worked through some of these processes in this way, and really nice structured design processes. And so what it's allowed us to do is like go in and look at the timeline and reorder certain things and constantly question, like, does this make sense? Does this make sense here? What are the implications? Why is this here? How does that link to the things that we wrote related to it? So it's been some like intense work. We do it on Tuesdays and Thursdays, oddly enough, as well. So we'll do like 4 hours and then I'll be drained and it's like try to recover and then come in and stream. I don't know, man. Like, have you always used those processes? Talk to us a little bit about the processes that you use and how that developed.
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny story. So, like, it kind of goes like this. So, a long time ago, I must have been in my early 20s, and I'd been, quite early into tabletop gaming. But I knew right from the get-go, right when I first started playing, that I just wanted to be the guy running the games and creating the worlds and, deciding what was going on and putting on multiple hats over the course of the game, stuff like that. And then I got put in this situation with a bunch of my players where they decided to kind of mess with me a little bit. So over, I might have told you the story before, actually, Shawn, but I'll just share it with everybody else here. It's they put me in this bind, right? So I spent like an entire week preparing this game for them. There's like this really intricate plot that I'd worked out, and I'd worked with like uber dungeon I wanted to put them through, and so I started them off in the starting area, and I kind of prompted them to go, to head towards where the adventure that I'd outlined was, and just to mess with me, one of the players said, "So where is this place?" And I said, "East." And he says, "Well, what's to the north?" And I already started breaking out into a cold sweat at that point, right? And I was like, "Mountains." And he's like, well, what's, they're impassable mountains. And what's to the west? And I'm like, a desert, and you can't cross that. What's to the south? Like this coastline and a huge ocean, and there's no ports in sight. Just really wanted them to go to where I wanted them to go. And they decided to head in the opposite direction anyway. And to cut a long story short, there's a lot of back and forth with these guys, like basically me trying to give them, random encounters or something like that, just to give them something to play during that game. And they would skirt each and every encounter. They just wouldn't do it. They would not take the bait for any reason. And, I found out later that they were just trying to sort of mess with me, right? But eventually, I remember I was seeing red, like at around that point. Like, I was in a blind fury. And I got so mad that I kind of introduced them to this character that looked like me at the time, huge afro and twirling a drumstick.
I'm trying to picture you with a huge afro.
Yeah, dude, I had an afro that was way past my shoulders at one point. Actually, it's nuts. The '90s were an interesting time, let's just say. But yeah, I introduced this character that was supposed to be like a replicant of me, and I was like, he does this with one hand, and a mountain comes up, and he does it again, the mountain disappears, and this is your DM speaking. You guys are going east. And it was everybody kind of burst out laughing, and the situation kind of decompressed in a way. But walking away from that session, what hit me was that for all the best laid plans of mice and men, taking away players' agencies is probably the worst thing that you can do. And for somebody, you just can't account for everything. You can't have a contingency for everything. So the best thing to do, and this didn't happen like overnight. This wasn't an epiphany or whatever, but what I quickly realized, or not quickly at all, actually, sorry, what I slowly realized was that the more you were familiar as a storyteller with the environment that you were basically placing your players in, let them have free reign. But the more you knew it, the less they could surprise you, and the quicker you could pivot if they did, throw you a curveball in there somewhere. And so that kind of started my deep dive into not just world building, but actually world building as pertains to literature, and not only world building, but also plotting stories, what goes into a plot in the journey. And really, it was a deep dive into literature and a whole bunch of different writing mechanics as well. And over the years, of course, like, we're still talking, this was about, nigh on 20 something odd years ago. And since then, basically, I've kind of incorporated into my more recent career, if you will. So I actually teach world building now, and I help indie authors basically world build for their literature, whatever it is that they're writing, basically, right? And this is my first time doing it for an MMO, obviously, but I think the principles still stand. And then in addition to that, I help people who write games and modules and adventures for tabletop as well, on structure and things like that. So I thought there are some I guess when you go through that kind of content enough, you know what questions you need to ask in order to kind of hit your end game. And that's really what it comes down to. It's know where you want to end up and then start at the very top and funnel down by asking the right questions. Figure out, you know, you know what, before I continue that statement, I want to preface what I'm saying with I have a structure for world building and I have a methodology that works for me and it's helped some people as well. But by no means am I saying that there's only one way to world build and that, you know, there's a right way or a wrong way or anything like that. There's what I think is effective and efficient for me and not necessarily so for other people. So for example, I have friends who they're what are called pantsers, right? They write by the seat of their pants. They like, you try to introduce any kind of structure to them and they'll be like, you know, I don't get it. We don't speak the same language at all. And it's kind of the same in world building. So you have, you know, people who like to create ideas, spitball ideas, and just sort of drop a whole bunch of stuff in there, and then organically try to piece it all together and make sense of it and see kind of where it leads. And that works. There's nothing wrong with that. For me, though, that's not the approach that I kind of follow. I like to kind of think in terms of what do I want my final product to look like? And what am I going to need for it? All right, now let's go to the very top and start literally with the building blocks. You know, what's the cosmology like? You know, what kind of planet is it on, or you know, galaxy is it in, or whatever questions I need to ask that will serve my final goal. And just sort of funnel down, you know, from the cosmology, it's kind of like the mythology, and then the races, and then from races you go into realms and kingdoms, and then countries, etc. Stuff like that. And I'm really oversimplifying it because I don't want to actually give a lesson in world building. But my point is that the idea is there's a structured kind of framework of checklists that I try to go through that I think for me makes sense because they give you this ability to very, very clearly say, this is where I want to end up. This is what I need to get there. Now let's actually stress test those particular ideas. Do they work? Do they hold water? Can they build on each other? And I find that growth becomes a lot more, when I say growth, I'm referring to the development and the progression of your ideas. It becomes a lot more organic as you kind of, you know, go through that process and go through things that way. And I think working in a team to do that is also a very refreshing kind of thing, right? It's because something really awesome happens along the way. You get, and I've mentioned this to Shawn a few times, as one of my favorite elements in the brainstorming or the thinking process that goes behind writing lore for the game, is you get pushback on ideas. You know, when you get a lot of creative people sitting at a table going, you know, I think this would be an awesome idea, and somebody says, I think that would be an awesome idea. It's like, you know what you could do with that idea if we just adjusted this and what have you, or we could totally go in this wild and crazy direction. And it happens, and you just hear some phenomenal things that come to the table. But at some point, you're going to have to say, well, where does all this get grounded? You know, what do you want to keep from? And you don't want to shoot anyone down, and you don't want to, you know, like be dismissive of anybody, obviously. But, you know, when you work within a framework, you can always just softly, you know, take that idea and stress test it against your existing framework, as opposed to.
It feels like it creates something that feels more like objective filters too, right? Like, because we've got all of this you know, all of these foundational elements that we've agreed upon, and we've been working and sort of beating them up and boom, and all right, so that's agreed upon. Does this new thing that's introduced, does it dismantle all of that, or does it build on that, and then does it meet the criteria of our current framework?
That's a great point too, actually, because the one thing I can guarantee you it will do is it'll allow you to answer that question when and as it arises. Because, you know, the cool thing is having, and I've always said this, you might remember me saying this a few times actually, it's all right to have arbitrary ideas. It's all right to have completely unrelated ideas. But at some point, hunker down and commit to some of those core ideas and ride them for wherever they'll take you. Just assume and when you have actually put them through that sort of development process, if what you're seeing no longer sinks to you and resonates to you, then pivot, change, drop, adjust, completely scrap, start something else, you know. But start from the framework of this is the idea that I like, this is what I'm committing to, and I'm going forward with it. And I think that that's the thing that kind of makes any kind of system work. The idea is that when you're starting off with ideas, and the thing is also just for the viewers here, when I joined, there was already a lot of lore written up, and it's this world good. It like blew my mind. Like that was the first thing that I said to Shawn. It was like, who cooked all of this up? It's insane, you know? And then basically as we started to kind of deep dive into it and try to sort of link it all together and things like that, you know, I was like, well, now I was trying to make heads or tails personally, like being the outsider coming into a new conversation, right? Or a new discussion. I started looking at it, I was like, well, how does this work? Does this bit make sense? Wait a minute, I'm not seeing this necessarily. And so that kind of opened up that discussion with Shawn of like, can I try putting a little bit of structure to this just to see if like this works or not? And it's kind of a show not tell situation as well, right? So it's like you have to demonstrate what it will lead to be able to build the case for the case to actually be heard and be valid, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And it was an interesting approach, but it seemed to have paid off because, you know, just look at like the headway we've made since then, essentially, I guess,
I mean,
right?
it took a little, all right, some trust and then getting used to, and then a lot of questions on like, well, what does this mean with regards to the framework and sort of what are we doing here? But then as it started going, it was real nice. And now as we've gone through the timeline process, and you know, the origin of the big events, big beats and different origins and all that, and gone into all the way up through the work that we're doing now with like the worldview and really getting a feel for the various races and what makes them different and their motivations. And I mean, to me, it really feels like we're building out this palette of colors and stuff. Every time we work now, it feels like more tools are being added to a toolbox. And it's like, oh, I cannot wait to go deep with this race, or I can't wait to go deep with this motivation or this conflict between the races. And it feels like a elemental process instead of like we've designed the structure and this and we've already built it. Like it's giving us the notes to then be able to really make music in all sorts of different ways with these guys and know that we're not breaking the rules because we know how it all relates. And so it's fantastic.
I appreciate that. To be honest with you, I completely mirror your excitement about it. I mean, as we started going through it, like we've also started seeing narrative for some of the races. We're inside their heads now. We know what they're about in general, and that's a massive step forward because the world already feels alive to us in terms of its occupants and what's around, and the history already feels really rich to us with this, you know, promise for us anyways as the developers in the background for it to expand even more and offer something really hopefully really, really fun and enjoyable for people who experience the game later. But yeah, you know, I'm definitely excited about it. Like I don't know if this sounds obnoxious, you know, that's like, cause we're the people creating it, but at the same time, I'm a fan of it. I don't know if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
It does, even if it doesn't make sense to them. I know exactly what you're feeling. Like I've gotten just so much more and more excited. Like, you know, it's occupying more of my thoughts, and I'm very much excited for the process of getting into the details. And we've been working on like the vertical elements, and I can't wait to go horizontal. Nicodemus had a question. So does world building lead to design changes, or do design decisions come first and lore is created to explain the design choices? So this is interesting. This is a little bit of what we've been talking about, your world building meeting up against then some of the design decisions that we've made based on various factors.
To answer your question, I think both methods work, right? It depends on the people in question. So, for example, when I'm working with an aspiring author, is like working like, let's say, on their first book, they're a lit graduate, you know what I'm saying? They want to kind of hunker down. They've got ideas and things like that, but they hit like this writer's block or something along those lines. And so they come up to me and they're like, look, I'm trying to build something, and I'm trying to create this world, but I'm kind of tripping over my ideas. And what I find the most common things that what individual world builders run into is either a complete sort of mental block or a mental block is nothing more than either burnout or basically a deficit in their knowledge library. Basically, let's call it their repository of inspiration, right? This is the time when you kind of want to leave your writing and your side, get out there and get inspired by building on or expanding on both your knowledge and your visual library. See colors, things, designs, people, talk, you know what I'm saying, and get a feel for different characters from real life, and then take it back to your sort of repertoire of your toolkit that you can then take to your creative process. So two things that they seem to run into: either this mental block, or this overthinking. Like, not overthinking, that's the wrong word. Excuse me, the word's at the tip of my tongue. They overcreate. They basically world build so much they don't write. They don't tell a story. They're just building and building and building. And that's why it's so important, I think, and again, I'm talking about the individual world build here, to know where you want to end up, or at least have an idea of where you want to end up, and build just towards that, right? So Shawn might have a giggle at my expense on this one, but I bring up the example of Chekhov's gun, right? So when you watch a movie, this is actually from the discipline of script writing, and when you see a shot of a movie that pans kind of across a room, and you see a shotgun on the mantle, you know that at some point in that movie someone's going to use that gun. So the idea here is that if you create it, use it. If it's not going to be in your final product, you're wasting, to my view, mental energy and time just putting that stuff there. And unless you've got sequels or an opportunity to sort of expand on that original story in mind, don't overcreate. At least don't overdo it to the point where it stops you from reaching the goal that you set out for yourself. So now come to flip that example to a team context, right? And so like you get people who are, let's say in our case, like in the situation I found myself in, is that a lot of the design was already there. Like there was already lore there. And it became kind of like, well, how do I bridge it? How do I not? And that became a completely separate problem, right? But let me go back to your question in a more direct way. The honest answer is one doesn't favor the other. They can both work, but context is very important. The context of what you're working towards, and whether you're working with a team or not, and whether so for example, if you were to ask me, which do you prefer, I'll say plan it, then do it. Definitely go ahead and create the lore first, and then let the design service the lore. But that is such a subjective and personal opinion. It's not, I represent myself in that opinion. It's not how everybody prefers it. And Shawn actually acts as the voice of reason in the team, right? Because he'll say, like, okay, guys, I don't want anyone to feel inhibited with their contribution to the ideas. And it works like a charm, because while I enjoy personally working from a very structured perspective, people that come up with just wild and zany and just ideas that are like 27 shades of cool, man. You know what I'm saying? And then you think like, wow, there's a place for these ideas here. They really need to be given the avenue, absent the constraint of structure, to be expressed. And so the answer is really both. That's the honest truth, Nicodemus. At the end of the day, it's whatever works to service your final product.
But then there's the other way to read this question in the MMO and in game development context as well, right? Because this is the other angle that we've discussed. And so it's everything that you've just mentioned when we're talking design and world building. Now, design in this context, because I read a little something into Nicodemus's question that we haven't hit on yet, which is the stuff that we've talked about our expectations that we set in advance. And let me know, you may have been implying this, but I may not have read it this way. There are game design question or game design decisions that we've been making sort of in parallel. to the lore development, especially up until the last, couple of months, where we'll hit on something and we'll be talking about it in strictly like this lore development context. And then I'll be like, whoa, wait, but the expectation is that the game will work this way mechanically. And so we may have to talk about that lore because we're not going to change. This is one of those things where, I'm often like sort of waving my hand and going, but based on the type of game that we're making, or based on how we're maybe referencing certain expected decisions, you know what I mean? We've got this structure in place already for the mechanics of the game, the game design outside of lore, that we're now going to have to sort of back and forth and see what happens to that lore. And with some of these decisions, it's good to potentially challenge them, because it's like, oh shit, we didn't think about that decision before, because we're strictly coming at it from this MMO point of view. And now we're doing this interesting, different, detailed take on world building. And then other times it's just like, we've got flex on the lore. The lore is whatever we want it to be. So if we're hitting something where we're like, we want this and this and this to be firm, right? Then, and to give more concrete examples, because people may be like, all right, but so like what? So there's the example earlier about, so BDC Retro is like, a race that Ham writes may have a special ability like the ability to see in the dark that can influence design, right? And so that's one of those things we could talk about. But in that one, that may not be that difficult, because we'd be like, all right, well, is it that big a deal that this race can see in the dark and the others can't? I mean, that's kind of normal in these games, give them a certain vision type. Now, on the flip side, there may be something like a race class combination that, is pretty abnormal. Or there's the expectation. I think we were talking about this before about, should this race have clerics, or should they only have like shaman and druid and stuff like that? And I was like, for that specific race, if they didn't have access to clerics, I think the community would be like, what, WTF. So let's think about that a little bit more. And it is, Ham's describing, what might in other cases be sort of an arbitrary decision. What we're looking at is, all right, but if they are going to have cleric and everything that comes with it, like the way that the implication of their interaction with their gods, the aesthetic of it, and all these other things, how does that fit with everything that we just said here? And then we go in and we actually do a bit of heavy lifting. I mean, that could wind up being a 30-minute, hour discussion just on tweaking that a little bit, and if not more, if it's a big deal. So, because we're going pretty deep with trying to make these races and their worldviews and the factions that fall out of that be like legit. Like, hopefully when you guys start to run into this, it feels like we took care in crafting them. So yeah.
Radical says that architect versus gardener. Definitely an architect, or rather more architect than gardener. Radical, yeah.
Which is fun, because I'm totally just like, hey, what if we throw handfuls of seeds over here and then we stab this thing in the ground a little bit? And yeah.
Yeah, the only reason I say architect more than gardeners, because you're gonna have to be a gardener as well, right? So like, often you'll find an idea that somebody kind of created before your own contributions that is just so cool. You're gonna have to retrospectively or retroactively figure out how to make it work, just because you don't want to lose it. It's a great idea, you know what I mean? And so you do have to think at the or fly by the seat of your pants sometimes as well, as they say, right? So I both approaches have their place, definitely. I still stand by that.
So before we go too much further, did you hit on it very much? So those of you that have checked out our website here, if you haven't checked it out for some reason, if you're new here or whatever, definitely do that. So check out the website if you haven't. The illustrations there, I think, yeah, all of them are hams. So let's see. I've got your folder of illustrations up. Yeah. So you'll recognize this one from the website. So how long have you been illustrating?
Um, as a hobbyist for as long as I can remember. Let's say on a slightly more quasi professional basis, maybe only over the last 4 years. And I'm kind of fortunate. I think for a guy like with an Instagram account that I don't really maintain very actively and just sort of put up there kind of the art that's inspired by the stuff I loved while I was growing up, right? So all that art, kind of old school art from the old Dungeons and Dragons books or the old Fighting Fantasy books. Those are those green spine books right back there. Excuse me. Um, you know, I guess I just sort of know what I like, but I was fortunate in that there's like this revival movement kind of going on now with a lot of games kind of yearning for the art styles of yesteryear, essentially, right? And I got lucky. Like just sort of a few people decided to reach out to me and take a chance on my stuff, and so all of a sudden, I found myself doing work for third-party publishers, working with Goodman Games, Pickled Dragon. Like it's really cool to see your stuff, published in a D&D 5e module. You know what I'm saying? And like a bunch of indie games as well, and things like that. So it's I kind of got lucky then, but in no way, shape, or form, I still think of myself as a learner, as an artist. Like I don't really, I don't know, like just starting out. Let's just say I'm still kind of just starting out. I'm still kind of learning the beats. But like I said, I think I've had a few strokes of luck in the sense that the stuff that I do seems to resonate or sing to some people, like Dave Beatty from Weird Frontiers, and I can mention his name because I know he doesn't object to me mentioning working with him and like talking about the work that I've done with him. So he launched a game that's called Weird Frontiers. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of it. It's a tabletop game that's basically Wild West meets the bizarre, and a smidge of fantasy in there as well. And I was one of the many artists that actually got to contribute to that product, but David and I built a massive rapport, and so he's constantly kind of reaching out to me saying, Ham, whenever you've got the time or whatever, or the inclination, I've always got work for you. You know what I mean? Like I'd love to just see more and more of your stuff. So in that regard, I think I've been lucky, but I still don't really consider myself a professional artist, and I think it's just because what can I say? Like I still think of myself as a student of art. You know what I mean? More than I draw to learn as opposed to have a gallery or a portfolio of
Right.
art that I sell to people or stuff like that. And then somewhere along the line, just some people kind of take an interest in it, and I'm appreciative that they feel that there's my stuff is worthy of being part included in their works, and it's kind of collaborative in that regard, right? So yeah. And frankly speaking, in terms of like artists from the Middle East, especially a tiny island like Bahrain, I mean, if you look at Bahrain on the map, the word Bahrain it covers the country. The country is so small, Bahrain like completely obscures the country from the map. And it was really cool. Last year, I got invited by a very small con in the west coast of Canada, called CamCon. It's based out of Kamloops, Canada, and I was a last minute addition to that one, right? And like I got on, and I really thought it was just basically a panel of artists just breaking into the tabletop industry. And as soon as like we went live and I saw my peers, I mean, I've got books with their art back here. They were all heavyweights. And I was just so shocked, basically, that like I got invited to talk with these guys, like completely fan struck. And Sean, you're gonna dig this actually. because I love the Fabulous Four from way back in the day, right?
Mm.
So one of the people who was supposed to appear on the panel was none other than Jeff Easley. And if I can dig up a link to that video, let me see if I can find it. I'll share it with you. I don't know if anybody else would be interested in looking at it. It's all art talk basically with some really, really cool and talented artists. And Jeff Easley, bless him, when they told me Jeff Easley was coming on, that might be on the same panel, like I will shamelessly admit I had a tear this big in my eye. I could not believe it. Like I was so dumbstruck by that notion. And he appeared for about 17 seconds.
Yeah.
Then wigged out because he had technical issues, and so he ended up dropping out of the panel. So I chalk it down to one of the highlights of 2020. That time I was almost on an art panel with Jeff Easley,
Well, yeah,
but it's
17 seconds. I mean,
17 seconds of a blank screen as he was trying to connect to the stream. We didn't even see his face. He didn't even say hi. It was it was kind of well, sad actually, for want of a better word. But my point is that to me, I do. I mean, I say I'm a learner, and I say like I'm just sort of breaking into the industry, and I say but I'm also very humbled by the fact that I think I'm the only guy I know who's into this genre of art here in not only Bahrain, but probably the Middle East, and who's actually, publishing some of his stuff or having his stuff published by third parties in the broader international market. And that's something that, I'm very happy about. Like it's humbling, and it's very rewarding at the same time, I guess, and on a tangent, that is the first time I see our underwater
oh really?
Yeah.
You haven't seen it swimming around?
Nuh-uh.
Yeah, so we just updated the water. John brought this in, and it's super spooky now because it used to be you could see super far out, and now you really can't see what's about to gobble you. Oh. Yeah, it's just terrific. These little additions, as they come online, it just takes everything another couple steps forward. So we'll keep tweaking and playing with it, but it's a really nice start. It looks like, I was looking out, it looks like we've got some server stuff going on. I see Slack messages going in the background with from Nick, so I'm assuming it's a discussion of what's up with NPCs. I looked out and they were just sort of spinning in place. I know we just replaced our pathing system, so yeah. It's funny, most of our time is spent in spreadsheets at the moment, not in game. So yeah, the process that you were describing earlier, man, it's been pretty fun because there's also like the thing that we've been doing where we've got the framework in place. We'll get in like the initial notes. I think pretty much everything's had sort of an initial stab at it when we started. There are a few things that
gaps there still
that were gaps, and then we've been filling that in. But it's fun because we do so much of our work sort of async, with different people in different time zones or different people on different schedules, and so it'll be like add in some notes on each of the references or each of the races, and then looking at the breakdown of the different worldview and things like that, and then check in later that day or come in that night or whatever, and then there's some new notes of like, all right, well, I see what you're doing here, what about this, or a comment in there of I don't know about that, and then the next day or the next time that we get together, like boom, off, and we start talking and look, and it's like, all right, 2 hours have elapsed, all right, another 2 hours have gone, cool, another 4-hour session on trying to get this stuff tightened up. But I'm excited because it's getting to the point where we can take that stuff, transfer it into Confluence as sort of the word, and then go into the next stack of stuff that needs to get done.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, I've already said I love the progress so far, and you know what? Like, tell me if you felt this as well. The 4 hours fly. They fly. You don't feel them, and then finally, when we say, okay, we should stop now, mentally drained.
Yeah, completely right.
It's like it's lights out. It's I feel like I've just put in like 8 to 10 hours at a job or something like that. You know what I mean? Like it's just in that 4 hours of being creative. But it's such a wonderful process, and then to kind of see it all come together, one in an organic way, two in a way that's kind of interlaced and interlinked, and having at the same time two very very cool things. The first being you knowing exactly what you're working towards and why you're doing these exercises. Because I'm also a believer that an exercise shouldn't be arbitrary, snobbish as that sounds. What do you call it? It should serve something in particular, right?
Well, it's a good way to not waste time.
Well, that's exactly the root of that belief, right? So yeah, it's work on the stuff that's needed, essentially, not the stuff that's earmark the cool stuff, but do the stuff that you need to do. And the second cool thing is that you get really awesome feedback from the team. Not awesome as in, oh, your ideas are wonderful, they're great. It's like you can hear stuff like, this just doesn't sit right with me for XYZ reasons, and then it forces you to go back and re-explore that idea and find a way to make sense of it or just completely rehash it. And that pushback process, for me anyway, from where I'm sitting, is one of the healthiest dynamics you can have in a team. Absolute healthiest dynamics. I mean, obviously, it's a respectful process as well, right? It's not like antagonistic in any way, but it's very conducive to sort of through adversity reaching consensus, and that's a rewarding thing as well, because you feel like you're all aligned by the end of it. It's like, yeah, we finally come to an agreement that we're all on board on this one, and this is the direction that we want. I think that's a pretty cool part of our process as well, which has been great.
Yeah, and I mean, without a doubt, as we continue to work through and get more of the specifics in place for proof of concept, it'll be easier to speak to, because right now we're also trying to avoid spilling any beans necessarily, or like saying too much, but it'll be a lot easier to point to stuff that we've then put in, and we can speak to how the process led to those specific characters, or the approach with regards to how they how this process influenced even things like the redesign of the city layout, etc. Like understanding the races better, understanding how they relate to one another, understanding the quirk behind like what it is that they do and who they are, and then why they would be in the city. So I think all of that's it'll be fun to actually speak to in detail later. BDC Retro had a question. Nick brought up early D&D, so it makes me wonder. I'm not sure if this is lore or normal design decision for your team. Do you have any thoughts on race classes requiring more or less experience based on if they are more powerful? I think that falls more into just like the core design discussion. And to date, what we've discussed is a normalization on experience. There's no race class, like the hybrid penalty and things like that, unless I missed something. Nick can speak to it if I'm wrong here. But normalizing that, and then when we look at differences in power, I think our goal is for there to be those to be as balanced as possible, with an allowance for a bit of imbalance based on fun and interesting, without then trying to make up for it with like a specific penalty. But yeah. Let's see. Yeah. No response. I think the server's being wacky. Do you have any idea when you might have some lore to show us? I know you're trying to keep it somewhat hush for now. We were talking about this earlier today, so it's going to start trickling in. We have some ideas that we want to discuss with the team after today's meeting about one idea for how to introduce some of the proof of concept lore in maybe a fun way. Either way, expect a reference to it, if not a little bit, in this upcoming newsletter that we're working on for this month. That's kind of the year-end update. So that'll be update 16. We just did 15 a couple weeks ago, I guess. And then after this upcoming update, expect it to come out in a more regular way. And then another note on lore. One of the other things that was really sort of wanting to do and waiting on for lore is we'll also try to accompany some of the lore with more art. And so that may be some illustrations from Ham. That may be some concepts and illustrations from Goblin. And you'll start to see that trickle out more. And then, I'll be honest, we'll have to look at the website. I mean, I'm not going to bullshit you. The website, like, I've mainly been the person cobbling that together in Squarespace of all things. So it's not the fanciest. It's a humble little website. As we're getting more and more stuff like lore, etc., we'll have to look at maybe a slight little redesign of the website or whatever, so that it's easy to use and find all this stuff and looks good. So, wait, the website was made through Squarespace? Yes, it was made through Squarespace. Yeah. So, Lotta, very, very soon you'll start to see it, and we'll be giving some info about the world in general, but we're gonna primarily focus on proof of concept, despite the fact that we're building out the whole world. And then we're really, really gonna try. I was telling Ham, I'm so bad at this that I'm so nervous. Really gonna try to not screw up, and then like just reveal all of the cool stuff in some unintended way, because we really want you to experience this and dig in and piece things together and learn and get it in game and not just post it up on the website. Hopefully that answers your question.
And when did we say the next update was going to be, Shawn, roughly?
This month. So probably around the holidays, because I've got the feeling. So Nick has already done a first pass on the update itself. There's a lot of info that we wanted to put in there, and so I've checked it out, and given some feedback. We'll look at that, and then really, yeah, I'll follow up offline. We'll talk a little bit about lore blurb and yeah. Lotta said, "Thank you. Just want to know enough to think about what kind of character I want to roll eventually." Yeah. Well, so things like I've been thinking about this as we've been working through the race stuff. I've been trying to think of a way to extract sort of the essence of each one of those and provide some of that flavor without revealing too much and sort of giving that overview. It won't be too hard to do given everything that we've got to work with, but that'll be fun, because I'm really so excited for people to get to know the races without ruining certain things that they will need to discover about themselves as they go.
That's hands down the hardest part of this entire conversation, actually. It's like, we keep falling back on the process of things, and yet it's what the outcomes of those processes were in terms of the lore that are the really, really exciting things. We can't talk about them just yet, so be patient with us. Please be patient with us. It's coming.
Yeah.
Hopefully you like it.
Radagar, a lot of definitely don't worry. I'm not worried about that part. The reason why we haven't gone like deeper on the races, or the reason why we haven't gone beyond like just sort of letting you know what races are there, even though the FAQ may be missing one. We'll still have to talk about the logistics of that. It's less about like being worried about revealing. It's more about honestly just wanting to finish up the work that we're doing so that what we're revealing is actually what's going to be in game. So a lot of the work that we show is iterative because it's fine. We can get that feedback and iterate and stuff like that. But we don't want, I think with this stuff, we're so close, and rather than just kind of like go back and forth and, it just feels like on this one, it's going to be so much more fun to put it out there and then see what you think and then go. Zoidberg said, I prefer you overpromise. The internet needs more material to complain about. Yeah, we haven't been doing enough overpromising. I'm sorry. Sorry, we'll work on that.
BDC Retro, thanks for your question. Will I also play a role in designing NPCs that have interesting dialogue just for fun, or quest NPCs that are scattered throughout the world? And in addition to this, will you help with the writing? To be honest, in a way, I've actually already done all three. There's some, let's call them prototype quests that I've done, and maybe not so much dialogue, but I think what needs to kind of come to the forefront. Okay, in terms of will I be doing it, I'm sure I'll be one of the many people who'll be doing it. I don't think it'll be like exclusively my role, but yes, I believe I will be helping, and I think several of the team members will be helping with that content when the time comes. But that's the actual crux of it. In kind of exploring in our lore building and world building kind of journey so far, what we realized was that there are points to address first, and certain things that need to get tightened first, and just sort of set down before we can actually get to that stage where we can comfortably start going ham on the quests and all that stuff, which I feel maybe Shawn agrees with this, is, let's just say, it has a precursor step to it before we can kind of run amok with it and go crazy with it and really start having fun. There's some more high level lore related decisions to be set in stone first, I think.
Yeah, because otherwise, like Ham was saying earlier in the discussion, I don't want this to sound bad, because it's not a criticism of the approach, because trust me, the bulk of the content I've created over the years, like personally, it was very much this approach. But rather than do something that's just very arbitrary, right? And we've definitely, Bunny and I sat around doing a lot of this throughout, this first year. Is like, I have an idea. Okay, cool. We'll put that over there. And it's like, I have another idea. Oh, let's put it in the blue pile. Okay, this idea is red. Oh, we'll put it in the red pile. We'll come back to that. It's and so it's a lot of just sort of interesting stuff, or things would come up in discussions here. We'd be talking to the team, and we put it down. We wrote everything down, basically. We tried to write everything down, and keep our ideas for like the world timeline and a Trello board where it's like, oh, we'll move this here, and then but what happens if it's there? The thing that this does for us is in sort of pausing on that, and then going through this process and cleaning all that up. And, there's still more cleanup to be done with a lot of the ideas documented and things of that nature. And taking the time to do that, what we'll wind up with then is this new, like I said before, and maybe it's a bad visual if you don't know what I'm talking about or whatever, but now we're establishing this clearer palette, so that when we come in and we go, all right, we've got quests of this type that we want to fill in, or we've got this area that we want to basically start fleshing out. We'll have done everything in a way where going into the low level details and like thinking about individual quests or individual mobs or individual item drops or any of that stuff, we can look and go, oh, okay, but they're from this faction, or they're, you know, it's a storyline related to this. Well, we've got a full understanding of what these things are. So cool. I can make up a name, but I know that it fits with them. I understand that, you know, basically it fits with the structure. And it'll allow us to move a lot faster later. And with regards to the example Ham was talking about earlier, actually one of the first things Ham did when he got on the team was, and I was trying to say, was it last year? Is last year, earlier this year? I'm trying to remember. But basically, because time's flown, I can't believe it's December. When Ham got on the team, one of the first things he did was, we were talking about this faction, and he wrote up not only some stuff for that faction, but then an entirely new faction. And you said, so we have Ham. Do we have cheese? I'm the cheese. I'm super cheesy. And so he wrote this up, and it was like, bam, so much information. And Nick immediately grabbed it and went in and like repopulated the zone and added so much stuff on just based off that description. So
And did it overnight. Well, it was insane.
yeah, it was like overnight how quickly it went in, right? So I've got a lot of faith in what we're doing with this process. It's you know, I've done this before, and this one feels even better. So Belfaster asked, do you expect a similar rework of your first dungeon after Night Harbor? Oh, that dungeon is strictly a prototype test ground. That is not what that dungeon will look like. Now we may keep some form of that dungeon because it's honestly it's just made with very simple modular pieces. If you look at it, well, I'll show you real quick. Watch. It's a dungeon that Nick built, and then I've worked on as well, and it's really just meant to be a look. The entire thing is made out of one shape, so yeah, it's safe to say that when we sit down and actually design the dungeon, right, and really get into the details of it, everything in here is made out of this. Oh, and I think, okay, I lied. And a few of these, we just made it look cool. We're pretty good at tricking you. So it's going to be Ham and I, we were talking about some dungeon lore, stuff you guys have. Cool. And we'll be doing full area designs for all of the zones and the dungeons for proof of concept. And
sorry, gotcha.
Oh, sorry, and then I'll stop. And then there's the last bit. Do you see any future zones, dungeons starting with concept art going forward? We will be talking more about our concept artist that just joined us. And let me see real quick. You may or may not be in chat. I don't know that he is, but so we've got a concept artist now who is working with us, who's doing a lot of character work at the moment, but he probably won't mind me showing just like a quick sketch, one of several quick sketches that he did the other day. Hold on, I'll pop it out. But yeah, so we're gonna start. You'll start seeing concept work as well. Put in a new window. So I think I showed some of these the other night actually. So it's crazy watching Goblin at work and doing concepts, because something like this can take shape in a matter of, minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, just like as we're talking, it's just like boop, 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 boop. Oh, let me move it. Yeah, verticality for sure. Scale. So it was funny. It was like in the morning, like this and three others, which blow out the whole scene. You see different details, which just sort of Yeah. So yeah. Okay, Ham. I'm done talking over you now.
And I was just going to go back to, I didn't realize that BDC Retro had put a follow-up to his question. He just wrote writing scripts. In terms of scripts and things like dialogue and narrative, and let's say by extension, things like the nomenclature of the races, the some level of consistency. These are all things that I'm very sure if I have any say about it and I don't get bopped on the head by Shawn, I probably will be sticking my fingers into to some degree or another. I think that's stuff that we do look at. But the thing is, what it really comes down to is where we're at in the journey right now. Yeah. So we're still looking at kind of like higher level stuff. Although we have done flesh outs of certain factions and certain races and things like that, like earlier and in our process, what's kind of working now is that zoom up, less prose and narrative and flowery language and more kind of, to the point. What is the core concept? What is it? Where's it we're going with these guys? What are they about? What's their worldview? Is there an ethos that we can, marry here that'll give us some kind of consistency? And the reason we're kind of investing the time and energy, like Shawn and I meet about 2 to 3 times a week and put a lot of hours into just sort of bantering online about the lore, and then there's the offline work as we're exchanging kind of comments and notes and messages back and forth. And the reason we're doing that is because, well, we've both seen kind of the proof of the pudding. When we wrote out something really, really fleshed out, Nick turned it around and implemented it into the POC zone or the test zone, at least that we have, in like, the blink of an eye, and that's great. So once we kind of have that foundation, we put the time into finalizing that, to use really flimsy language, but like by our measure, what is that uber cool, fantastic foundation of all the things that we love? The construction is going to be really easy. That's gonna be a quick turnaround, and then that'll put us in this wonderful position to start, looking at the challenges of consistency and narrative and dialogue and scripting and character names and place names and consistencies and things like that. It'll be a wonderful problem to have when we get to it, but it's a little. We're not quite there yet, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, and I don't want to imply that it's too far around the corner either. Actually, I don't think we're very far away.
No, we're not. And I think the big benefit to the approach too is we're creating a stockpile that's going to sustain us for years, right? We're talking about stuff already that's like, man, this is something that folks will be figuring out years from now. And I don't mean that in like a weird sort of like hide it from you or dangling or whatever. It's just they're elements of the world and the world's history and some of the events that have occurred and the events related to the races and their origins and their gods, and that there's no way for it to not take time to sort of learn and go through it. I mean, I guess in theory we could just all write it up front and throw it at you, but it's just why it wouldn't be fun, right? Like it's so the question, how much of that lore will be integrated into actual gameplay?
Great question.
EQ has a lot of lore, but much of it's on paper. I think one of the things that's going to help us get it in is having it on paper before we actually do the design work. And this isn't by no means a criticism of EQ or the lore. I love it. And folks like, Katerin and other folks that were on the team can let me know if I'm misstating this, but we had to dig around and try to find that lore. It'd be a little bit in a document here, there'd be a little blurb over there. A lot of it we were like reading off websites and like, where the hell did they find it? Because we don't have it internally. Instead, what we wanted to do is create this foundation so that we have it and future, members of the team or whatever can really look and go, all right, so rather than make up a random NPC name or a random item name or, like a random event, we have a palette to pick from, and it's like, all right, well, why wouldn't we know these historical figures, we know these events. It makes sense to make these items related to that, or it makes sense to sort of like, um, rather than make something up on the spot, we've got something to pull from. So, hey, Goblin, you did join at the right time. Did you see we were talking about you right before you joined? Is that what summoned you? K Sims, LK asked, sorry if this was asked already, just tuned in. How far along is development? Any news on alpha? Development is just over a year. I was just looking at some images on my phone that were screenshots of stuff that we had worked on in September of last year. And so we've been just over a year now, focused primarily on tech tools and the foundational design, things like combat formulas, a lot of sort of high level decisions. And now that we're plowing through the lore with a lot of those other decisions in place, we're going to start working more on content. Alpha, depends on what we're describing as alpha. Let's say it this way. We would love to have friends come in and play with us so we're not as lonely this year. And, we're in playing, so don't be shocked if sometime in the first 3 quarters of the year, we want to get some friends in and play with us. Now, who that is, how many of you that is, what the conditions for getting in are, blah, 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 we'll be figuring out. What we're not going to be doing is charging people to play, for like an alpha or whatever. If we're taking your money, then we're going to let you in a reasonable way. Let me rephrase that, because that may turn out to be a lie. Rather than charge somebody like $400 or $500 to get an alpha, and again, this isn't a dig at any teams that do it. It's just not how we're going to do it. If at that point we're capable of going into like an early access mode or something like that, or a limited mode, then rather just charge you $15 a month, like we're going to be charging you when the game's out. But we'll have to talk about it. We'll see. At the end of the day, whether we're going into some sort of a paid early access, which who knows, we'll see, or not. The goal is the sooner we get people in playing, the sooner we learn about whether or not everything affected by people coming in and playing is hardened and what needs work and all that stuff. So yeah, anyway, Goblin just answered your question in detail. Let's see, because the question was Ham concept art influenced by lore influenced by concept art, and Goblin said, I think so far it's been both. Correct.
That is correct.
Read as much as I could. Yeah, Goblin, excellent work in like digging through and finding the information in Confluence and stuff proactively. That's been great. Then I'll generally make something that pushes the understanding of what we have. Yes, definitely challenges us. And then refining is anywhere from in between to more on the concept side to landing on the lore side. No, it wasn't a lame answer at all. It's fantastic.
No, that's a really, really good answer. And it's an important to look at it another way. I mean, the idea behind concept art is both to inspire the lore. I mean, that's the idea. It's the concept behind that art is to basically start putting ideas into your head. It's meant to feed the imagination, right? And then that's a part of the process. That's kind of like the yin. And then when you come to the yang, the lore is meant to kind of feed the imagination of the concept artist, and for them to kind of start interpreting that lore and thinking about the design challenges of best expressing that lore and bringing it to life. So they have to coincide. They have to kind of work harmoniously, even disharmoniously together. But they're both integral to have. I think you can't have one without the other.
plus the way our team operates too, right? Like it's our manner of operating. And you know, maybe this will help you in thinking about like some of this based on the questions. We're really not a team of like, okay, so this is your hat, that's your hat, that's your hat. Don't cross these imaginary lines. And you know, the step will be we're going to do this, and then it's going to be that, and then you're going to hand it to them, and then boom, right? Like we've doubled the size of the team, but we're still a tiny team, or we're a small team, and everybody wears a lot of hats, and everybody's very passionate, or they wouldn't be on the team. Everybody's passion is backed by certain specific experience that we are looking for, or they wouldn't be on the team. And everybody's very reasonable because that's you know, that's I'm distracted by hat questions. Yeah, that's the expectation. Like, if somebody doesn't like something, we expect that they're going to say it, and who knows, they could be wrong, and we could be like, yeah, well, but you know, chill, or be like, holy shit, that's actually good point. We didn't even consider that. And sometimes when we had somebody speak up yesterday very passionately in Slack. It's like, I am very passionate in my opinion about this. And we're like, wow, okay, did not see that passion about that coming. We were definitely going to consider this now. And that was even one where I was like, my bad. I probably could have spoke up on that one sooner even, right? So, can I have a hat? I don't do anything. I just like hats. You'll get a hat. You'll have hats in game. Depending on your race. Some races will have no hats. Just kidding.
I love this comment. I hope every team member gets a hat item named after them. And somehow I cannot think of a flattering image at all of a ham hat, Shawn.
A ham hat?
Ham hat, you know.
Yeah, but your actual name is pretty dope. So it's very mysterious and Middle Eastern.
My actual name pronounced correctly in English makes it sound like I've been on a 2-night bender. Hamad.
Hamad?
Hamad as in hammered. You know,
Oh,
it's
hammered.
a close word to it.
Dude, I have not been saying it that way. I say it. I stretch it out. I'm like, Hamad.
Yeah. That is the American pronunciation of it. There's a tendency to emphasize the second syllable of a word. It's really interesting because you have a lot of Arabic names in the US, like what you would say Rashid or Tariq. They're Rashid and Tariq, where I'm from. You see what I mean? So the pronunciations, yeah, they kind of they jump, they change a little bit.
It's funny. I would have assumed that would be opposite. So yeah, Goblin mentioned, as I was talking about the multiple hats, Goblin came in and like within the first day or two, like did a model, retextured it, showcased what it would look like. And we looked at it and was like, oh yeah, that helps a ton. Yeah. So
Ladaran. You know what, Ladaran? Would you guys like, I don't know, throw tomatoes at me or something, or like hate me to death if I told you I have never played EQ? Like I do not actually come from an MMO background. Tabletop games have been my forte. The only MMO I've ever played was World of Warcraft, and it was kind of early days, so I caught the tail end of Classic just as they transitioned into the Burning Crusade. I could already see the game over there.
you're dumb, man. I told you.
Sold. No, but I plan to be an M&M active player. It's my retirement plan.
We would we'd bring him on the P99 with us, except then that would detract from all of the work that we're trying to pile on top of him right now. He'd be raiding with Nick, and I would just give him the death stare.
As long as we don't play WoW now, no, I haven't played WoW for many an expansion, actually. It lost its luster, for me anyway. Not to take away from the game itself, but for me, it just wasn't the same after the Burning Crusade.
The trick is to work on MMO already. So Nick's slamming bugs and stuff into the database while waiting for everybody to rebuff after a wipe. That's beautiful. Let's see. Cryptini's got a nice take on it. So what Ham is saying is that Shawn is bringing fresh perspectives onto the team. That's actually not bullshit. That's legitimate in a number of ways. So, and it, I mean, I'm not doing it. The team's doing it.
But vice versa too. Like, you know, and of course, I don't mean to speak for Shawn, but I find that there's awesome perspectives and fresh perspectives from. Pick any member of our team and have a chat with them, and I guarantee you they're gonna throw a spin on things that would never occur to you. You know what I mean? Like, there's always something awesome that somebody has to contribute in one area or another, and sometimes it's surprising. Like, it takes you by surprise at how profound you know, something could be that somebody else says.
It's fun too because I do think that the various perspectives, what that also helps us from doing is like immediately starting in the same groove. Right? So it's not like, you know, when I mention troll, if I'm thinking of troll from like an EQ kind of background, I've got one picture. You may have another one. Goblin may have another one. You know, Gary or John or Ollie or somebody may. And a lot of us tend to, I think in terms of a couple of strong anchor references. So I may be thinking more EQ, but also thinking a little bit about like some D&D stuff that I was perusing. And then you're going to come in from this other angle, and then we may talk about, you know, like a troll, and you're like, what if they're covered in fur and wearing party hats? And I'm like, that's just not going to ever happen. So, not that he did that. But I was trying to think of an extreme example. You know what I mean? So there will be those times where it's just like, yeah, but that's not, you know, or that's not going to fly. And we beat around. Seek and Destroy says you guys mesh well together. It's crazy. It is a lovely team. I don't just say that to try to hype it up or whatever. It's been a really fun time. Good to have someone with no classic MMO experience. Yeah. I think there's some precedents for fur-covered trolls, to be fair. And it's funny, whenever I think of, when I'm not thinking of EQ trolls or D&D trolls, or I guess WoW trolls a little bit, I think of the troll doll with the...
with the hair, that troll doll.
Yeah. So...
Yeah. I like I actually find that when I'm designing a world building, words are more powerful than images. You know, like if you take and this is purely my opinion, but I find that the cool thing about working with people who have, let's call them, for want of a better word, different frames of reference, or let's say different stylistic biases, right? Or let's say biases towards certain stereotypes towards what a race should be, for example, if we're talking about races. And so they tend to think in very visual terms. You should look like this or feel like this, you know? Whereas I kind of believe that, you know, give me a blank slate, like an empty canvas, no image, nothing, but find the right words to describe it, and then you've kind of codified it. Now it's just waiting to come to life now, you know? And I kind of look at it from a very, very almost diametrically opposite perspective from a lot of my teammates. I believe in the power of a well-articulated word, let's just say, even if my talking might betray that in a way.
No, you're very articulate. Did you just say that we don't believe in articulate words?
No, 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 no. I wasn't implying that the rest of the team doesn't believe in it. I mean, I was contrasting visual versus written. I,
Oh.
I prefer even when I build like this is an interesting point, Sean. Actually, this goes back to the example I was talking about earlier when I was working with authors that are trying to world build. When you tell somebody, okay, we're going to world build, one more often than not, I guarantee you 7 to 8 out of 10 times they're going to say, let's start with a map. They're going to want to start with an image of some kind so that they can start placing things. Whereas for me, I start with a few paragraphs. I create these modular pieces that I then start piecing, placing together. So if you imagine they're like little pieces of post-it papers, basically, or something like that. I start putting them next to each other and building these spatial relationships between them because I already know everything I need to know about them because that's already been written down. And then my map serves my content in a way because the map is visual and very arbitrary to my mind if I were to lead with it. The same goes for things like city design or dungeon design or stuff like that. I always lead with the questions as opposed to the map. Like what's this place about? Who built it? Where were they going with it? Who was involved? How long did it take? How long has this place existed? And questions ad nauseum. And then once I've kind of satisfied a certain number of those questions to a point where, well, yeah, now I know where I want to get to. Then I start not creating a map, but laying out a map spatially. So what I mean by that is I'll start thinking in terms of, well, what components does this, map require? And I'll be making lists now. Saying, and then moving on from those lists, I'll start thinking, okay, where are they laid out? And I'll start creating relationships, spatial relationships between them. Then finally, once I have all my little post-its kind of down, then I'll start working on a map. So that's my process. It's almost it's a little contrary to the norm from what I've experienced with other world builders so far. Basically, most of whom I'm referring to are my students, actually.
So BDC Retro had a question. Ham, are you writing deities for just to be ready about, or considering how they may affect gameplay, just to be read about, or how they may affect gameplay or faction?
Both. Those are not actually mutually exclusive concepts. So and also let's be clear on what we mean when we say writing deities. So again, there's no like paragraphs of prose and flowery language. It's very dry design language. We're kind of figuring them out, and then as we figure them out and what context they apply in, they tell us, they inform us in terms of how we deploy them in the proof of in the POC zone basically later, right? So that's kind of the idea. When we design what we are, to paraphrase what it is I feel I'm designing the toolkit I need to build the POC. Without this toolkit, without knowing what these things are, like it's like the guy that takes a piece of wood and that piece of metal and makes his hammer. Well, when I'm thinking about, like, let's say, to use your example, deities or something like that, I'm building that hammer. I'm kind of creating my little concepts that are not overly fleshed out, not overly detailed and things like that, but there's enough meat on them that it is now a useful tool that informs any kind of detailed decisions that I need to apply in the proof of concept zone. So it's kind of like that. You start broad and funnel down, as I kind of led with at the beginning of this. Yeah. Thank you, Sean, for clarifying that. Yeah, but yeah, that's the idea. It's always start really high level and then start detailing your ideas as you funnel down, while maintaining an objective view on what your end goal is.
Yeah.
I mean, because those ideas must serve that end goal. Anything else, to my mind, and I'm not speaking for the rest of my team here, but it's a vanity affair. You see what I mean? It's a luxury, not a necessity. So not to say that there's no place for it, because I love just earmarking ideas to revisit for later. But if they're not going to take me to where I need to be, they're not a correct, or let's say appropriate, utilization of my time at that, in this time.
Yeah.
So
imagine Ham sitting on the floor and sorting sorting all of his Legos out.
My Post-its.
Yeah, he's got his Post-its. And then what we've done is like, you know, Bunny and I have worked on a bunch of ideas, and then I'll have more stuff or something will come up. So just imagine coming up with like a little bucket, cute little bucket full of Post-its and dumping those out as well on top of there. It's like, here's some more. And so when we talk about things like gods, it's like, there's a bunch of stuff where it's like, hey, wouldn't this be a really cool concept for a god? I think this is going to be super fun. Isn't this kind of weird? Oh, bloop, and right up a little bit. Or what about this god? Isn't this an interesting origin and what they're doing now? Bloop. And we've got a pile of that. And then Ham's like hitting it from this other angle of, all right, so, you know, we have an understanding of why gods exist and what happens to gods and how gods evolve. And then, you know, are there things that are similar to gods and how do they fit into this? Right. And so we've got this whole plethora of things that we're now working with. And then, okay, well then if they're gods, but why are they gods? Who are they gods of? And, well, how did they come to be? And if you've got, you know, potentially racial pantheons and things like that, when did the races get here? Have the races always been here? When they did get here, where did they get to? So where did they start? And then, given the things that have happened to this place over the eons, did they move? Where did they move? What did they leave behind? What's the remnants of the thing that made these people move around? Then what happened? What about their gods? What about, right? And so these are the kinds of discussions that we've been going through and really structuring and hammering out. And so that creates like this tapestry that we can look at and go, okay, so when it comes proof of concept time, not only are we redoing this zone and relaying it out and all this other stuff, we'll understand what was here before this was here. We'll know how long this was here. We'll know why the thing that was here before this was here. We'll know what happened to it. There may be things that were here before even that. Where'd they go? What are the implications? What are the implications then for all the rest of the zones around here? Because when did they arrive? So yeah.
And that's thanks for that, Shawn. Actually, that was a really, really cool way of illustrating that process by example. Because it's like I said, it is about asking questions ad nauseum, right? It's just, you know, stockpiling there, but you're constantly asking these questions with the point of trying to reach that very well defined objective. Because, you know, it's like, well, obviously our proof of concept starts in a certain zone, and this zone had, you know, possibly an indigenous people, maybe more than one, and then, you know, other people came here, and there were people before here, and these people, you know, had certain technologies, or they had certain magics, and they worshipped certain gods, and maybe those gods maybe interacted with those gods in less than ordinary ways, let's say, and things that is so hard to talk about all that cool stuff.
Oh my God.
I know, right? Like, before I give anything away, but the idea is that it again goes through that process of asking question after question after question, and the idea is that once we kind of go through that, right? Because, you know, I come at it from one way, and the guys come at it from another way, and then there's a curveball thrown in there, but then, you know, another one is thrown right back across the court, and it leads to this really, really fun, sometimes intense, sort of dynamic between the team. But it always leads to the important thing, which is resolving, answering the question. The question gets answered. And then when it gets answered, what we often find is that, you know, and this is a common trait of world building. Like, I say this to my students all the time, like, guys, be prepared to kill your darlings. And it sounds really crass to say that, but the idea is don't be precious about your ideas. Your ideas have to serve the story you want to tell. So ideas are a dime a dozen. Adjust, pivot, change, discard, replace, you know what I'm saying? And challenge yourself to fall naturally into that mindset that your ideas are only inhibited by your capacity to be willing to push beyond your own comfort zone. You know, the first idea that comes to me is usually the one I first reject. A lot of people will say, well, no, the first idea that comes to you is usually the best one that you get. And, you know, hey, more power to you, but I disagree. I think the first idea that comes to our mind stems from a subconscious comfort zone that we have in the back of our mind. It'll be the one that typifies the stereotypes and the tropes and the things that we kind of feel comfortable with and love. But then I say, all right, well, let's say that, I'll earmark it. Then I'll say, okay, now force yourself to come up with another idea. You know what I'm saying? And then force yourself to come up with another. And when you do that enough, your brain, you've essentially trained your brain to be nimble enough to spitball and machine gun ideas. You know what I'm saying? Like you can just sit there and churn ideas out and you can pivot and you're not precious about your ideas. If, I tell Shawn this all the time. I'm like, I ardently defend all my ideas because I really think them through. But at the end of the day, if they don't sell, if they don't sell, they don't sell. And so, boom, pivot, new idea on the spot. And common courtesy as well dictates never knock back an idea if you don't have a viable alternative for it.
Right,
Because
for sure.
to do anything other than that is just obnoxious and rude.
Yeah, just shoot something down with no alternative. It's like if your idea is better, we'll definitely change. But if you're just like, well, that's lame. Oh, okay, but it's yeah. So it's funny on the whole thing when Ham and I were like first talking as well. He was so passionate about like defending his ideas. I actually had to be like, "Hey, dude, are you going to be one of these guys that like doesn't want to give an inch?" Just I forget how I asked it. Like,
it wasn't exactly that, but the thing, and you have to understand, he shocked the heck out of me when he asked me that. I was surprised, genuinely surprised that I'd left that impression on him. I was like, maybe I'm pushing back or, pushing a little bit too hard. And so Shawn and I kind of had to figure out our dynamic. And I just figured, dude, just spill the beans. Let's sit down and let's talk about it. I'm like, man, I'm not precious about any of these ideas. I'll defend them. These are my reasons why. We talked it through and there was honestly no looking back right after.
I don't mind asking that kind of thing, right? Like it's I try to be polite about it most times. Sometimes it's just the easiest things like, hey man, really like your ideas. This is really awesome. Are you going to be a pain in the ass? Like, it's like, no. Oh my God, no. I'm like, okay, cool. High five, virtual high five. Let's keep going.
And then, proof of the pudding's in the eating, right? It's like, we both pivoted, we both adjusted, we hammered it out, we cleared it, and then we started just putting that new notion into practice. And God, we've been churning stuff.
Oh man, it's been crazy. Fun, dude.
It's insanely good.
So, not a lore question, but Overwoman97 asks, comp sci graduate with 4 years of web development experience, trying to make the switch into video games. Where's the good place to start? Honestly, these days there are so many resources. There, essentially, I would say the one thing you could do is just really think about what it is that you want to work on. Like discipline or skill specific or subject matter specific or whatever. You're overwhelmed. I would say then pick a very sort of narrow target based on gut or feel, or if you can just sort of, if you've got an idea of like what interests you most, or put names in a hat, right? Like just if you've got like 5 or 6 things but you can't choose, given the fact that you've got, the background that you do, I'm assuming, I don't know, but I'm assuming the technical part may not be as overwhelming as it would be for someone like me when I was a few years ago. So I was like, I want to mess around in Unity, or maybe I'll get back into Unreal or whatever. And I was also taking just some like online different programming courses and learning like a little bit of JavaScript and stuff like that at the time. And then the thing I did was I quickly found that there was something I wanted to make. And by something I wanted to make, it was I saw essentially what amounted to, I didn't realize at the time, just kind of a tech demo for Magic Leap's augmented reality setup. And I was very curious about how they might have faked a thing. And so based on my curiosity there, I grabbed Unity. I started Googling and reading up on like different AR SDKs, learned how to integrate them, learned how to push to my phone, and then went in and started playing around with the actual assets and stuff, and was able to just sort of cobble a thing together. And I learned so much other stuff around that just based on wanting to see one thing on a phone. I would say do something similar to that with regards to games. Or I posted the Discord links up there earlier. Feel free to come into the stream Discord. We have these conversations with folks all the time, and I think at this point we probably had half a dozen or a dozen people come in and sort of work through the similar question, and everybody's very helpful. Okay, back to lore.
Belfaster actually brings up a really, really cool point. Like, if you don't have a great original idea or just want practice, remaking old classic games, maybe with a twist or two, are good for learning. Plus, you can add them to a portfolio.
Absolutely.
And I'm a real ardent supporter of that notion, because I don't believe in, if you will, the standalone original idea. I think most of the ideas out there, like, those are very rare. Those are gems, and they're very finite in the number that are out there, right? But my point is that a lot of the stuff that you see in popular culture, ranging from games to stories, like what I mean by stories, as in stories in whatever medium, be they in movies, TV series, books, graphic novels, theater, pick your medium, right? The comic books, etc., and so forth. Like, those are hardly original ideas. The originality comes in the presentation of those ideas, right? So, like, this is interesting. Shawn and I were having a conversation.
I was just thinking about that.
Joseph Campbell, right, and the hero's journey. And it's like, like from the day we were scribbling on cave walls, basically. Like, the human psyche has a way for collating ideas and telling core themes, or rather, core themes, and setting core archetypes, if you will, in the stories. So, working off the assumption that whatever medium you want lore for, be it a computer game or a book or a novel or whatever platform you want to present your creativity on, having an understanding of certain key skill sets and building an arsenal or a repertoire of certain things that are at your immediate disposal is your friend, right? So when I hear somebody say to me, I'm stuck for ideas, like, let's say, and I'm talking to one of my art students, and they'll say, like, I just feel uninspired. I don't have, I've got like, mental block. I can't think of any ideas to draw. And, and I wouldn't be this is not an original thought, what I'm about to share with you. Actually, I'm sure a lot of artists actually will probably agree with me on this one. But the odds are that you are exhausted, like you're overworking. But if you're not, and you're just stuck on ideas, then the odds are, I'm willing to bet money on it, that your visual library is limited. You basically simply have not taken the time to absorb enough from what is around you and from what is in other places to build a visual library. And so, is that a problem? No, it's what's contributing to your frustration, but it has a very easy fix. Get inspired. Okay, you say, Ham, like, how do I get inspired? Well, look at pictures, look at photographs. You don't have to go to places. You're magically transported to a place the minute you look at a photo or a great image. Look at existing content, replicate it. Like, somebody who wants to dive into writing comic books, for example, dude, just pick up a comic book and, script out the plot, strip out that skeleton, swap out the names and characters and ideas, and just, rehash that plot and make it your own. But obviously do it with a little bit of, do it ethically and with some integrity, right? Like, make sure, like, you let people know that you're doing that. But that's your practice piece. The idea is that nobody creates, or very rarely does the first thing that we create become our magna opus. I mean, that just doesn't, the expectation for that to happen is so unrealistic that it ends up acting as a natural blockade for people from even making the attempt. You know what I'm saying? And I would rather see all these creatives out there creating stuff that sucks, that they know sucks, but they're creating it because the consistency is in the effort, and the rewards, the fruits come later. They happen organically. Stop trying to create the ultimate phenomenal project. Do stuff. Create multiple projects, but finish them. Don't leave things hanging. Just finish them. See these projects through and make them happen. And if you feel, if idea generation is your problem, then build your library, build your repertoire of knowledge, read more content or consume more content in the medium that you want to create, right? So play MMOs, but also really deeply analyze these MMOs. Write down what sings to you about them. Write down what you think went into creating that MMO, because that's what you're going to do, right? And I'm talking about somebody who's trying to work out of the comfort of their own home, like, not necessarily something with the scope and scale of, let's say, Monsters and Memories, but let's instead of MMO, let's say a simple game, or write a comic book, or write your first novel or novella or whatever it might be. Equip your have a great frame of reference, a very broad and diverse frame of reference, because that's what you can kind of lean on. Talk to people who just have ideas. That's also a great way to go about it. Idea sharing is absolutely phenomenal. Just spitball a bunch of ideas, take notes, and dedicate a book for it. That's a great way of doing it as well. Sorry. Yeah. The Americans call it plagiarism, the French call it an homage. Yeah, I don't know, like work your way around it in a way that won't land you in jail, basically, right? Or disrespect the original content creator, I suppose, right? But my point is, it's actually get up and make the attempt, because the rewards come with gaining the mileage from having made multiple attempts. And you'll find that even if you take an idea and make an attempt at it, don't come up with a new idea, but try to rehash your old idea in a better idea, you're still going to get more mileage than that, than worrying about not being able to work and therefore not working, or not having an idea to work on and therefore not working, or on making such a perfect product that you end up stressing so much that, again, you end up not working. You know what I'm saying? Ideas that are in your head are great, but you've really underrepresented yourself in terms of like just the amazing stuff you can contribute to the world. And take it from me, a guy from a tiny little country somewhere in the Middle East, saying people will notice.
Yeah. That
just take it from me. You know what I mean? Like a little bit of the stars lining up, the right way. I'm a firm believer that no matter what your level of competency or skill is in a craft you are passionate about, or crafts you are passionate about, there's an audience for you.
Especially these days. The total audience out there is what, 2 billion people on the internet?
Yeah.
Right? Like it may be hard to get discovered or whatever, but the potential is there. The opportunity is there. And like you said, just get started, right? Because the other thing that happens too is, and we've had this discussion with the stuff that we've been doing here, like all of this is going to get reworked. And yet all of this is a rework of a rework of a rework, right? Like, most of you probably don't even remember what this looked like the first month or two. And so when we work on stuff, I work with it knowing that, all right, well, it's going to be thrown away. All of this will be thrown away, but the Nick does. So it's the thing though is that first step of making a thing got me familiar with the tool set. Like, okay, this is Blender. And then all of you were so helpful in like showing me, oh, well, here's the shortcuts, or hey, check out this tutorial. And so the act of, the act of just picking anything and starting, it's gonna teach you a little bit about what you do and don't like, what you need, what tools help you, what tools don't, what references help you, what references don't, what pattern of activity helps, what doesn't. I mean, if you're not bullshitting yourself, if it's like, oh, I can't seem to ever write because I never sit down and write. Well, okay, but if you didn't start with that problem, it's like maybe I need to buy a thing, this, or that. No, you need to just sit down and write.
Right, exactly.
Stephen King's got a really good book, if I'm remembering correctly. I could have sworn it tackles this, but there's if you're interested in writing, Stephen King's On Writing is really good. And people are like, oh, well, he just writes that crap. Well, he writes that crap that way for a very specific reason. That's why he sold so many damn books, right? And there's an art to it, right? And it's about refining your process, and it's about the discipline. Dude, if you're having trouble getting started, actually, just get on YouTube and look up videos on discipline, for God's sake. Get some Jocko Willink, you're right? Like, that's a great place to start. So, Goblin said above, something that also is a challenge is freedom and lack of direction. So it helps me to figure out a thesis. Then you can start jumping off things in that direction, pulling from your subconscious, or by adding more around that into your mental library. Yeah, and constraints are good as well. Like, define a box that you're going to work within. Set up there's all sorts of ways of constraining yourself or constraining your ideas. And that applies to everything. You're better off with constraints. Hey, Orc Boy.
Yeah. I'll share with you a very useful thing that worked for me, actually, and I think this can transcend mediums. Like, assuming again your goal is to tell a story or to shape lore for whatever content you're creating on. If you don't know where to start, use a prompt. Just use a prompt. Hop online, look up random idea generator, random story plot generator, or whatever, and the constraint that you give yourself is, I'm going to write 300 words using this prompt. You have to understand that I think one needs to be clear on what they're working towards. To me, if my current problem is being stuck on ideas, well then let me use a prompt so I can force myself, push myself, challenge myself to generate an idea, irrespective and without self-judgment or criticism on whether it's good or bad or not, because my goal is not to write something great using that prompt. My goal is to train my brain to be able to pivot nimbly whenever I see a prompt when I'm stuck. And so, like in the tabletop gaming experience, right, you'll find like there's this massive revival today. I don't know if any of you are tabletop gamers, but if you are, this might resonate with you in some way. There's a movement and like an emergence, I would say, today of solo tabletop role players. And basically, the way solo tabletop role-playing games work, for those of you who don't know, just to give a quick context, is you are both the person who runs the game and who plays the game. You're essentially, in D&D terms, DMing yourself. And the way you do that is you use random tables and oracles that create or generate prompts for you to define these open-ended things, open-ended questions like, where am I? Who's here? What are they like? You know what I mean? And if you start like picking up some of that stuff, I can recommend one for you, actually. I can recommend a really, really good one, because this, honest to God, did wonders for me. It's probably in arm's reach right here, actually. Yep, here it is. Don't know if you guys can see this. It's called the Mythic Game Master Emulator. Basically, hold on, can you see it? There's a delay on my screen, so I have no idea if you guys saw that or not. But that's what it's called. It's called the Mythic Game Master Emulator. You know, not sponsored. But the idea is that this thing is absolutely wonderful for people who just want to tell stories, or who want to run games for groups, or who want to design content and don't, or just want to train themselves on how to design content, not publish stuff. Like, how do I create an adventure? How do I come up with ideas? Use it. I mean, these tools are out there to actually help you, and borrow shamelessly from, across disciplines. You want to create a game on Unity, but pick up a tabletop resource that helps you build games and apply what it can teach you to your, quest or your journey to creating a game on Unity, for example, right? That's just an example. Or use it to create your character. But the bottom line is that, again, these things, these resources and tools and kits will not turn you into a master. They will not give you that idea that is your golden child or your golden cow, right? But what they will do is they are your training apparatus. repeat this exercise enough and it'll be second nature to you eventually, but you have to let time take its time. You do the work. That's all you got control over. Do the work. You know what I'm saying? It goes back to what we were saying, like, what Stephen King wrote in his book was a writer writes. That's the gist of it. If you want to be a writer, then write. There's this awesome meme I saw, like it's a 2-panel comic essentially, right? And it showed this guy who's like essentially saying, I really, really want to be an artist. And this sort of hand, like the hand of God, appears out of nowhere, handing him a pencil and a piece of paper going, have at it. Do it. Be an artist. Just start drawing. And that's what it comes down to. If you got a great idea in your head, don't do yourself the disservice by keeping it vaulted up in there. It's like writing poetry and leaving it in your drawer, or like, I don't know about you guys, but I feel that, I'm a creative, and if I've got ideas, then I think the world should, I should have the opportunity to express them to the world, and I want to share them. And some people are going to love them, some people are going to dismiss them, and some people are going to hate them. And that is the nature of things. But it's your thumbprint, man. Your ideas and your creativity, that's your thumbprint on the world. Don't leave those ideas in your head. Get them out there. I mean, sorry, it sounds a little almost kitsch and melodramatic, if you will. But I speak from personal experience. I put aside all of my creativity to pursue a corporate career, and it made me miserable. And only when like really miserable. I'm talking mental health deterioration and physical health deterioration, you name it. It destroyed me and sucked my soul out, literally. And only when I left it to do the stuff that I love did I actually start feeling alive. And by some miracle, it caught the attention of some people took notice. Now, whether that's providence or whether that's, the fruits of my own labors, I don't know. Your journey is not going to be the same as mine, but you're not going to go anywhere on a journey if you don't take that first step and commit to the task you give yourself and do right by your ideas and get them out there. Just do it. You know what I'm saying? It all comes down to that Nike tick, right? Just do it. Just do it. Just get it out there. And yeah, that's it. There you go. Pep talk for the evening done and dusted. Please excuse me.
Yeah. I mean, the comment about melodrama, it's an interesting one, man. Like, because on one hand, you could say, okay, well, but I'm being dramatic, but with this topic, you get one life, right? Like, you get a chance to. Yeah, I was thinking Shia LaBeouf as well. You get one run at this, to the best of our knowledge. If anybody's got definitive information on that not being true or whatever, please hit me up in DMs. But yeah, now I'm switching to I think I'm about to start. What wasn't that? Yeah, I was about to say we're gonna switch to 8 Mile. So, but all these people are right. Everybody's saying the same shit, but it's right? Like, I am so empathetic with people that are like, dude, I'm tired after work. I don't have, I don't want to sit down and draw, or I got a lot going on, or there's this situation, there's that. Thank you. I'm totally not distracted by mom's spaghetti right now. Son of a bitch. Why did I say one shot? So, but I've talked to a lot of people. The example that I use a lot, I might have used it here. I once had I worked for a creative director, and I had some, we were getting business cards. We were going to Comic-Con or something. And he was asking about, like, well, but, why do you need business cards or whatever? I was like, oh, you just have business cards to give them out and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, then he asked me, he's like, well, do you just give them to industry people or what? And my response was like, no, like, anybody that asks, I'll give a business card to. He's like, oh man, I don't want, I'm not going to give my card to like, fans or whatever. It's just, I don't want random people hitting me up. And I was like, so dude, I've given business cards out or given my email address out at every fanfare I went to on EverQuest. Anybody that I talk to, if I see somebody that's, like interested in video games and we strike up a conversation, because I'm that guy that'll do that, like in, in a restaurant or whatever, I'll give out a business card. And the reason for it is, of the like, honestly, probably hundred, to not overstate it, business cards I've given out over the years, I've had like 5 or 10 people actually send me an email, if that, right? I've had so few people follow up with me. It's like, yeah, man, they're like, how'd you get in the industry? And I'm like, I fell in love with this game and I decided I was going to go work at the company and then social engineered my way in through the guide program. Next thing you know, I'm working there, like put my shit in a U-Haul and moved, right? Like I wanted to do it. So I packed my shit and I went there and I did what I could to network before I got there and I got a job, right? Like, and I'm not saying that always works, but the number of people that have asked me and been like, and they're so passionate. And again, I'm not trying to shit on anybody if this is you as well, right? Like, but I am trying to tell you the truth. I've had so many people that are like, I'm so passionate about doing X. I'm like, so what are you doing to do X? Oh, well, this is happening and that and the other thing. And there's some other stuff. And I'm like, all right, but are you that passionate about it? Right? Like, oh man, I would do anything to be on this team. Okay. Like, and not this team, but like, a company I'm at or whatever. It's like, or I'd love to work on this kind of game. Well, dude, why don't you do it? And these are people sometimes that are, they've got resumes. They're in the industry. Well, but then I've got kids and I've got to uproot them and stuff. And I'm not trying to be, not trying to empathize with people and their kids and stuff. I'm like, but if this is the thing that you think is going to be the thing for you, if you're not just saying words, if you're serious about like, this is my passion, then your kids will adjust to a new school, homie. Like, oh, I got to sell my house. Houses get sold sometimes, dude. Right? Like, and maybe it's just because I was in the army, I was Army kid growing up and I've moved a lot. I've gotten used to it. So maybe it's easier for me. But the thing that I'm saying is I'm not trying to show a lack of empathy, but I do think that people don't do themselves favors when they bullshit themselves. Right? It's like, yeah, I want to do X more than anything, or I'm really desperately passionate to do this thing. In the example of like they have a really solid friend structure, or they I'm not saying quit your job and don't provide for your family, or be irresponsible. But I do think that if you're saying, hey, I want to do this thing, and the only thing stopping me is I can't move. Okay, well then look at what are the other options. Fuck them kids, chase your dreams. You know what? If it's a situation where you've actually got a shot, and it's going to dramatically improve the quality of your life, then how about instead of like fuck them kids, how about you take all the steps needed aside from moving? All the steps needed aside from moving. Have you contacted that company? Have you like done any bit of like sort of social engineering? Do you know anybody there? Have you reached out? Have you written a fucking email? Right? Like have you I'm assuming if you think if the option to move is even on the table, then I'm assuming you've done some legwork, right? Have you set up a situation, especially these days with remote work? Have you done anything up into the point of moving. And if you've done all those things and it's clicked, first of all, if it's an opportunity that's that good, are they accounting for the fact that you need to move? Are they, maybe that company, if you actually took the time to reach out to them, or that opportunity, if you took the time to do the legwork, it could be that the response is, "Hey, man, I understand. I had kids too. What year are they? Oh, they're sophomores. They got 2 more years. Okay. Well, for the next 2 years, this is how we can do it. Or, hey, you can do it here. Or, you know what? We just need you to fly out 1 week a month. Or, we need you to come out for X amount of time." So I see what you're doing. You're doing that thing where it's like, oh, fuck the kids and blah, blah, blah. But the underlying fact of it is true, right? Because so many people didn't even get to the point where they wrote the email to even see if there's a chance. And again, going back to the origin of this story is I've given out those cards. I've had 6, a dozen people, 10 people actually email me. Of those people, I responded to every single email. Of the emails that I responded to, they're like, "Oh my God, I'll do anything to get in the industry." I had like maybe 2 respond back to the response. And if I'm not mistaken, those people got sent to the next thing. Okay, we'll talk to this person. Oh, okay, well, I'll talk to so-and-so for you. Oh man, like the dude who did my floors, like laid my hardwood floors in San Diego, we started talking about it. His son was an art student, and went out of my way to ensure that the artist helped him with a portfolio. And next thing you know, the dude's in the industry, right? Because he kept just doing the work. So, as someone who's actually come close to starvation, I can't get why some people are so hesitant to let go of something steady that isn't killing them mentally, or is killing them mentally. I mean, again, I'm not trying to show a lack of empathy, but I've had some very up times and some very down times, and I would say that at the end of the day, it's there's just a lot of being honest with yourself that needs to happen.
Yeah. Like Shawn, if I may, Shawn's touched on some very, very important points here. And it's like in the context of shifting careers or getting another job or something like that, you've still got to do the legwork, right? And he's absolutely right. You can say that, like, you have to be practical about your life. There's always something that you can do to mitigate the damage of making a transition of some kind. And the truth is, there's also another side to this, or an added dimension to this, right? So you've got people who say, for example, don't want to, necessarily work for somebody else. They just want time to do their own thing. The side hustle that they want to turn into the dream role or dream job, or, the things like that. The truth is, the same principle still stands. Like, our ability to change only stems from the steps we take, the practical steps that we take towards it. And so the idea is that, there's always going to be some kind of price to pay. Like we kind of went dark and grim with the, fuck them kids, chase them dreams, right? But the reality is that more likely you're going to sacrifice on nights out with your friends because you're practicing and refining your craft. You're going to sacrifice on sleep, and you're going to sacrifice on, leisure time and playing the games that you love and watching the or consuming the media that you love. There's got to be a trade-off in there somewhere. Believe me, though, it adds up. That mileage adds up. It's not doing anything. It's the inertia that is the killer. And in a way, it just doesn't justify having the grievance. You know what I'm saying? Like, somebody whom I would not be, this is no judgment of anybody, right? I know different people, different circumstances and all. But I cannot justify to myself trying to change my life, whinging about it, and doing absolutely squat, like sitting in front of the TV watching movies, or like, being on YouTube, or, playing a game all day, just running D&D games all day or something like that. I can't justify that to my head. It sounds facile to me, like disingenuous even to myself. And so if you can't hear your inner bullshitter, you know what I'm saying, then you need to sort of reassess, right? And the thing is, you've also got to understand that change, let's add another dimension to it, that changing and kind of transitioning or following through with your intentions, right, is, believe it or not intuitively easy as people may think. So, Shawn and I can go on all day with go for it, just do it, right? But the truth is that's an oversimplification of it, because sometimes, not knowing what to do could be crippling. Having a genuine fear of the repercussions of doing it can be crippling. And people, in terms of their own sort of like psyche, right? Their levels of anxiety might spike up so much that it still reinforces that inertia and their inability to change. Anything can happen. Like, pick your permutation of this issue. But it still bubbles down to no change will happen if no change is made. And so, if you don't act, then, it's like that adage, you wake up one day and you find yourself in a hole. The first thing, and, you're sick of being in a hole. And the first thing you need to do is stop digging. And that's step number one before getting out of the hole and moving on with your life, right? So, but it starts with a decision and then an action. And so the healthy way to look at it is to, one, dig deep, ask yourself some uncomfortable questions and be real to yourself with the answer, because you owe it to yourself, right? That's number one. The number two, set a realistic plan of action. And three, forgive yourself the days that your plan can't move forward. Because again, the success is not in the achievement of the tasks that you list out for the day, but rather in their attempt. And if the day ends with you checking off one or two, or even only one item of a checklist of three, then go to bed comfortable with the fact that tomorrow is another day and you're going to check off items 2 and 3 and maybe 1 from that day's list. And if the next day you do absolutely nothing, forgive yourself and give it a crack the next day, because your learning, your advancement, your progression is not measured by tasks. It's measured by how far you've gone in the aggregate at the end of that year or over a time scale. So a month later, how far into your journey are you? Like, let's say you get to take a step forward in terms of, milestones, I don't know, like every week. Well, if at the end of the month you're 2 in or 3 in, you have empirically moved forward. You might not be where you need to be, you might be a little slower, but you've moved forward. And so the bottom line is that's progress, because now you are that many milestones ahead of the other guy that's too afraid to even take that first step, or worse, make that decision to actually act on the change that they would like to see in their life. And that's the idea, guys. It's not about just being crass and saying, look, if you want to change, just change. It's not easy. There's so many life issues to take into account, so many personality types, circumstances, and you name it, like, pick it. There's n number of permutations in terms of the challenges that the world will undoubtedly put in your way to stop you from getting to where it is that you want to be.
Yeah.
But the decision to act and acting is the only way.
Yeah.
Good.
And I've got to say, hopefully nothing I've said has come off as like, get an idea in your head, quit your job and go for it. Like, no, man, like, but as Ham, mentioned, there's a lot of little things that we can do, and none of us do it perfectly. None of us are, probably as committed as we, could be. I mean, get that check a couple times a week where it's like, oh shit, okay, well, could I've been doing this instead, right? Like, right, like I've got to balance, my personal life with what we're doing here, even, and I've got to be very conscious of it. Jasmine is my fourth wife. I've learned a few things from the first 3. And looking back on the history in terms of work-life balance and everything else, right? And so by no means am I saying like, bam, just go for it. But like the examples that that Ham just gave, you know, I've read a lot of really cool stories about people that were like, hey, I took an hour aside each week, but that was my hour, and I focused on this, and I didn't waste it because it was my only hour. Or you know, and then maybe that led to every morning before the kids got up or whatever, I decided my commitment to myself is I'm going to work for 30 minutes, or before bed, I'm going to put it aside. But there's that discipline of like doing it and sort of committing to ourselves, like, okay, I'm going to do it. And then making really good use of that. It's the same thing with like working out or whatever. Like, you know, again, that's not something where I'm perfectly consistent or commit to it. But the more consistent I am, the more I sort of like, I'm like, oh man, I couldn't, yeah, maybe I'm not going to work out today. But, you know, it's like that day where I'm like, I'm just going to get in 20 minutes or something real quick. I'm going to do something. And then it's like, all right, that 20 minutes, you know what? I could probably make this about 40 or whatever. And then just sort of repeating that and reminding ourselves of like how nice it is to be able to do those things for ourselves. And, you know, and again, I'm not just going to harp on this example, but I think it's a good sort of case study to look at. It's like, all right, so I want to get into the industry, and I'm working in something either completely unrelated or an ancillary sort of industry to games. But I have kids, and they're still in school. All right, and they're not going to graduate for 6 years or whatever. There's nothing wrong with having a 6-year plan or a 7-year plan,
Nicely.
right? Like,
Yes.
all right, so start doing it now. I mean, I'm 47 in a few months, right? Like, we're doing this thing. I love this project. I've got, you know, absolute belief in what we're doing here. If for whatever reason something didn't work out with this, I've learned so much through this process that I can't imagine not trying to do it again, right? And I think I've mentioned something on Discord about that, right? Like today, it's like, and if the same people were down to do it again, if that wasn't what happened, if the team didn't just, you know, like implode or something like that, then we do it again, right? And it's like, and you keep sort of making that effort, knowing like it's not going to be perfect the first time, like Ham was just saying a little bit ago. And it's just driving, you know, forward and learning and learning and learning, and being patient, because it's, you know, you're not going to be a black belt overnight. You know, you've got to start as a white belt somewhere, and then expect to just commit to it, and it's going to take years and years. So Cotswold said, Sean's background makes me feel like I'm waiting for a boat that is never going to come. What do you mean? There were no boats involved. There was, it was honestly, it was, nothing came to me. The boat did kill Nick, but Nick started it, Piflet. Nick attacked the boat. Yeah, and so, I mean, I think I mentioned it before, but Cotswold, one of the things that happened with me was like, that the whole first couple of years of me getting into the industry, I mean, dude, I couldn't sleep half the time. I lived in a $500 a month apartment that was like as big as this room with my girlfriend and our 2 cats. And the $500 a month was cash. I had to hand cash to the landlord. You know, it was very sort of sketchy, under the table kind of thing. And all I thought about during that period was, I don't want to blow this. If I blow this opportunity, I don't know that I'm going to have another chance at it, another route or whatever. Like, I didn't have very good perspective at the time. It was like, it was one of those deals where it's like, we barely got enough money for ramen, and I'm still like scraping together the $5 to walk down to the convenience store at like 11 o'clock at night, because I'm stressed out and I can't sleep, and I haven't smoked in like 3 years, but I'm going to buy a pack of cigarettes, and then I'm going to sit on the stoop and smoke the cigarette and go, why the hell did I just spend like whatever it was, $5 for these cigarettes? This is disgusting. But I was trying to find any way to like de-stress, because I was just like, dude, I don't want to screw this up. And no one was there to tell me of like, all right, but if you screw this up, you've already made this attempt. Like, figure out why you screwed it up. Like, what happened? Learn from it. And, you know, I was in customer service. go find a different customer service job, right? Attempt it, like, so I don't know. Maybe none of this is sage advice or whatever. It's just all I can ever tell you is like, or all I can tell you is everything that I've ever done is just, I just attempted it. It's like, I want to be in a band. I'll start a fucking band, right?
Instrument first, right?
I didn't even have an instrument. I just wanted to be in a band. I was like, I honestly, I can't play the guitar worth a crap, but I want to be in a band. I have an idea for a band. And I just started pushing people and be like, all right, I think this is the right person for the band. I'm going to badger them until they're in the band. You're talented, cool. You can carry us. You're a good musician. I'll sing. I can't sing, but I can scream and I can be present on stage. So we'll do that. Like, I was in the army. I was like, I want to open a skate park. Well, how am I going to open a skate park? Well, I'm going to go into the skate park directory of Transworld and there's phone numbers. And I'm going to call starting at the top every phone number and go, hey, dude, you have a skate park? I'm about to get out of the army in a few months and I want to open a skate park in Alabama. What should I do? Like, how did you make your skate park? What do I need to know? And, like, they'd be like, that's crazy. No one's ever done this. Right. And it'd be like, and I learned some stuff and I learned how to reformat my questions and I learned how to not waste their time and I learned how to have a better opener and I learned a little something else. And I'd be like, oh, but the guy that said blah, blah, blah didn't tell me blah. Next guy. Hey, okay. So I've heard you have to have insurance. What kind of insurance you use, right? Go through the thing. Next thing you know, we've got a skate park in Alabama, right? Like, and it's just always about like putting yourself out there and do shit for people. When I had the skate park, we go down to skate park in Tampa, biggest skate contest of the year. Go down there and I see people lugging musical equipment in and out of sort of back area. I go where I'm like, hey man, you want me to carry some shit? They're like, who are you? I don't know. Dude just going to help you. All right, cool. Next thing you know, I meet the owner of the skate park. Next thing you know, he's coming up to my skate park to show us how to do stuff, right? Like, it's put yourself out there, do stuff for people. Don't ask, and take, try to do shit. Goblin Works said this sounds a lot like that TED Talk from Nardwar. What did I do? I asked. Dude. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
It's almost like on Goblin's note there on his comment, it's almost like when you read it like that, it almost sounds like absurd, right? I didn't actually see that specific TED Talk or anything like that. But I'll tell you guys this, the last 2 jobs I held were because I walked in and I asked. And I promise you, in some cases, it works. Because I got in there and I sat down and I sold myself to these people. Like when I say sold myself, I don't mean like I prostituted myself. But what I mean is I sold my skills and what value I can add, what I could bring to the table to these guys. But I just, didn't take an appointment. I barged into the office and, asked very politely for a meeting. And when I got it, I milked it for what it's worth. I milked the time that I had with these people who were decision takers for what it was worth. And I sat there and I pitched and pitched and pitched. Perhaps even oversold in some cases, but hey, you get in there, you get a foot through the front door. And I don't know, I guess it all comes down to just making the decision to act and going for it. The truth is, there's an interesting perspective, like somebody further up in the comments, I don't remember the exact comment now, but like implied that sometimes things can be a little bit too difficult to go ahead and act on them. And the truth is, that's such a valid point as well, right? Like, how do you chase your dream? How do you even act on chasing your dream to the point when you're in crisis? Like let's say you're married, you got 2 kids, and you're out of a job and you can't put food on the table. You're not going to be the guy doing designing a computer game on the side, hoping that it'll take off in 2 years, you know what I'm saying, or a year and a half or something like that, further down the line, because you've got a solid idea and hope and a dream and no team to back you. It just doesn't make sense. When you're in crisis, deal with the crisis. Like just it starts with sort of setting your priorities right. You know what I mean? And this is going to sound, again, really, really cliche, but you are a priority. If you are somebody's guardian or somebody responsible for somebody and can't take care of yourself, Well, common sense assuredly states that you will not be able to take care of them at some point. You're gonna falter, you're gonna lapse, you're gonna crash.
Well,
Something,
you
right?
put on your oxygen mask first in the airplane, right?
On the
For a reason.
airplane, exactly, for a reason, and that's exactly it. And honestly speaking, if the problem today is staying afloat and keeping your head above water, it's all right. It's okay to shelf your dream for a little bit until you're not treading water anymore. You know what I'm saying? And that's okay. It's just have the right level of focus. So it's sorry, not have the right level of focus. What I meant is focus on what's important for now and just deal with things one step at a time, because it's okay to do that. It's it's all right to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. And
Yeah.
and then you never know, you land the job that you need, or a job that pays the bills and keeps you and the family afloat, and you find that hour or two, even 20 minutes to do what you need to do when and as you are able, you know what I'm saying? And the mileage adds up. It adds up.
Yeah.
And you have to, like, I mean, I don't know, I go back to saying you have to allow for letting time take its time. Those who wait for dramatic change are often sorely disappointed or just really goddamn lucky. You know what I'm saying? But if you want to change something, then start the change and let time take its time. Trust that it needs time to manifest in the way it needs to for you. You know what I mean? And ride it out.
Yeah.
You will be making sacrifices, inevitable in some form, in one way or another. It's inevitable. So
The the question that you've asked, Bubonic. So do you know anything about finding funding for a project, tips and tricks when asking for loans and whatnot, gaming related but not making a video game? And then clarified, been trying to start a gaming cafe, but just don't know how to sell the idea to a bank to give you a loan. I'm worried that there are aspects I forgot. So the whole call around and asking is nice, but there aren't many in your area. So to clarify, none of the skate parks that I contacted were in my state, right? Like I was in DC, and so it was all over America. But at least I had a directory that was right there. I would say that the interesting thing with, I don't know the gaming cafe business, but having had a skate park, I learned quite a bit, through our failures there. It would be helpful to definitely, research, and don't take this the wrong way, but if you've properly researched the business, my assumption is that you're basing your desire to make an internet cafe off of other internet cafes that you've looked at and sort of deconstructed to some degree. So those are potential contact points. Then, yeah, and sort of working through your business plan, it's really looking at looking at all of the elements involved there, is like starting just fundamentally, like if you've got a location that you think is going to be awesome, then you probably have a rough idea of the overhead. I would think about all things related to that user or that customer. So it's like, first of all, they're people and it's a place. So start to think about what's the liability, what sort of insurance might you need to have or whatever. You can do a base assessment based on scale of like hardware. Scale and hardware is probably going to help you understand what's your throughput. So like how many people can you have in there at a time, and what is having a customer mean? Are they paying per hour or minute? Hopefully not per day. Please never do that. We learned from the skate park about that. Is that the only means of revenue that you're going to be able to generate? Like, is it from that, that service, time-based service? And again, how scalable is it? From there, if there are other revenue streams sort of tied into it in terms of merch or food or whatever, you've got to think about, first of all, what does it take to get into that? Are there permits involved in that? So basically just take it and rip it apart and look at all of the various pieces. When you put them together, if you hit me up in Discord, I will try to find, there are a few business books that I've gone through, or at least some articles, but I could have sworn I've got some books, check my list, that really help you sort of think about businesses and scaling. and how to basically, because you're going to have to think about pricing and everything else, right? And that's one of those things. If you've never done it before, you're going to be like, oh man, I don't want to overcharge. So it's $5 an hour, and I've got 10 computers. Okay, you can make $50 an hour. And that's just net, right? So how many hours are there in a week? All that. So yeah, a lot of CU. But yeah, those will be the things that you have to consider, and it's all of that stuff. If it seems daunting, it is, until you start digging into it and figure it out.
So essentially what Sean's saying is that, one of the skill sets that you might want to try and give yourself the opportunity to learn is how to put together a business plan and analyze whether a business that you want to start is one that you want to start because it's a viable business versus one that you want to start because you think it's a cool idea. Because the former might actually have a shot at surviving. The latter, you're taking a much, much bigger risk, right? And the thing is, the reason I bring up specifically the notion of a business plan is in order to learn about it, you have several avenues. I mean, there are YouTube videos today that'll guide you on what questions to ask and how to construct a business plan. You can speak to people, you know what I'm saying, that and ask them how they went about their business plan. You could hire consultants if you had the inclination and the means to. But the other thing also is, remember, you can turn that same sort of discussion on its head, right? You can walk up to the bank and say, okay, guys, you've told me you don't like my idea, but can I understand why and what I could do to sort of change your perception of the idea? What is it that is not resonating with you on this? There's no shame in asking an authority that you want to lean on to help you, to ask them instead to help you help yourself, if that makes sense. So that's actually another way you can kind of look at it, right? And these would be, I mean, these would definitely, I don't pretend to know the nuances of anything that you've gone through. And of course, the banking, I'm an ex-banker myself. So as corporate lending was actually my job over here. But the banking system in the Middle East is, I would say, to a large degree, actually tremendously different from, I'm assuming you're in North America or in the United States, actually. But yeah, so, but the thing is, be shameless in asking those questions, and don't settle for hey, I'm not saying that you did, but if you've ever felt that you had to settle for hey, we don't like what you've put up, and so your request is declined, smile and say, why? Can I please understand? And ask them for their time to help you get your head around it and what you need to do to be able to turn it on them, right? Because even, banks have different risk tolerances for different things, for different types of ventures that they're willing to fund as well. So it might not be a business plan problem. It might be a sector or an industry problem. And if a bank has a problem lending to it, that's something you want to know. And you want to know why, because you're willing to put money to invest in that sector. And it has to factor into your decision-taking process, either to reaffirm your conviction in the project or to disaffirm, you know what I'm saying, some of the notions that you may have because something else has come to light, and you've been elucidated to a different perspective that you perhaps might not have accounted for before. But ask questions shamelessly is what I would say. Don't settle for just no, sorry, we can't help you. You know what I mean? Just turn it right around and ask the whys and the whats and what have you. And next thing you know, you'll be building worlds because you asked too many questions. So that's just what it is. But yeah, I hope that's of I hope that's of help to you. I mean, you said the banks don't like the idea so far, and we don't know the details of that, and you certainly don't need to explain yourself. But I would definitely, I'm going to assume that, rightfully or wrongfully, I'm just going to assume that you didn't follow up perhaps with more questions that could have better equipped you basically to pivot and react. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the assumption I was coming from with my current comment. So I hope that wasn't obtrusive in any way, and I hope that was useful to you.
And just saw Bubonic's response. One thing that I was thinking about as well, and I've seen this written about, and it's something that we're in a way doing right now, is So we have a mailing list. It's a great metric for us, right? So we keep putting up there. I think we've just passed 800, like 830 or whatever. We'd like to get 1,000 people on the mailing list by the end of the year, by the beginning of next year. That would be great. Please sign up for the mailing list if you're interested in Project. Oh my God, I almost said Project N. It's been so long. Monsters and Memories. Yeah, I think it's because it's still the old landing page. I got to make a new landing page. Anyway, but it's one of the things that you can do on some of these ideas is make a website. Basically, make your internet cafe's website and then post it as a, hey, this is something we were thinking about doing in this area. We're gathering names of people, and basically we're creating a mailing list of people that would be interested in this business in this area, right? And one of the things that may help you do is get an idea of the active interest in your area, right? If you can start to build that community and build that following, then you can turn back around and go, and there's no guarantee the people that are on our mailing list, they may not all check out our game or stay on the mailing list or whatever. But for any of the 3 ideas that you have, consider it like a dry run. One of the exercises we've done on game projects in the past is create the box. So you create the box. What does the box look like that the game would come in back when games came in boxes, I guess. And, and it helps us visualize what that end product is. In that case, if you set up a website for internet cafe and all of a sudden, people start discovering it through organic search and you're not doing any paid advertising or whatever, and you've got all of these names, you got 1,000 people in your area that would want to utilize that service, then you can take that, put it in your business plan, go back to the bank and go, there's interest here. So just because you don't understand it yet, because you're an old tired banker, doesn't mean anything. So I don't know. Just a thought. I just realized like we veered off of lore like 50 minutes ago. Apologies, folks.
Yes. Got that, guys. But I guess it's relevant questions like, the guys are here and the topic came up and this is what they wanted to know. I mean, so I think I don't disvalidate what we talked about. But yes, we are very, very off topic, as it were. Very off topic.
And again, for like the 5th time, I don't want to seem lacking in empathy, and I know it's not easy, and I'm not trying to make it sound easy, right? Like, it hasn't been easy, and there's been plenty of failure, but I think hopefully it's more of a thing we're saying it's worthwhile, and weird coincidences happen. I mean, we're talking to Ham here, who's now on this project through so many. Dude, you know how many random things had to come together for us to even be hanging out tonight?
About it. I swear to God, talk about the stars lining up the right way, and I think for both of us, for that matter. Yeah, it's nuts. A lot of it's a story and a half. Let's just say.
Well, and that's what I was about to say, Nick. I was actually thinking about that because, like, we're sitting here today, because of a random EQ stream that was honestly just meant to be me and Jasmine playing a little bit of EverQuest on Twitch for a little while until we got bored. And then that was that, and then figure out something else to stream because she and I enjoyed streaming the news earlier in the year. And it's like, oh, let's play some EverQuest because the TLP is coming out. And no intent in like making the game and, none of that at the time, to be honest. And then through the stream, through the coincidences, through talking about emulators, through talking about P99, through talking about EQ, through Nick being interested in PlanetSide, right? And next thing you know, we've got Nick. First we had Bunny, and then we had Nick, and then we've got Ollie, and then, right? And it's just sort of piecing together, and we keep talking about, oh, maybe we're going to make this game. And then Ollie shows me some of Ham's artwork randomly, like one day, and then, like a month later or something, I was like, oh man, you know what? I keep thinking about this guy's artwork. I want to see what's up. All right. And hit you up. I think I hit you up on Instagram.
You reached out to me on Instagram, and then we scheduled like a video call, and that call was, I still remember it vividly. Actually, it was a bizarre call because like Ali had reached out to me about a month before that, but he and like he we talked on a very kind of at a high level of things, like with the role wasn't clear, the project wasn't 100% clear, things like that. It was a very, and it's not to fault Ali, it was a brief conversation, just very introductory. But when Shawn and I talked, I remember vividly that beyond him explaining the project to me and me kind of talking about what I could try and bring to the table from an art perspective, we just gelled. Like we were into the same shit when we were younger, into the same authors, into the same artists, you know what
Into
I'm
the
saying?
same heavy metal music.
Music, and all of that cool stuff. And so there was this kind of like click. And when we got on as well, it was a good first sort of engagement. And then I think like it simmered a bit, didn't it, Shawn? Like it didn't just roll out immediately. It simmered a bit, and then it was kind of like, well, what can we do? And I started throwing out some designs and like putting in some of my artwork that was on Instagram as well. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it kind of started in that capacity. And then I remember like putting my finger up and volunteering to write, and then I wrote, and then
Yeah,
wrote
because
some
I
more.
wasn't aware of that at all, honestly. It was just I thought the illustrations would be helpful, and then you're like, well, but would you mind if I did a little bit of writing? I'm like, I don't care as long as you keep doing some art. And then then you like sent me a 5-page list of questions about the the stuff that we're working on, and yeah, and boom, next thing you know, Ham's off to the races, and he's creating a crap load of lore, and then like Nick's saying, then Nick and Ham are talking lore, and then Nick's implementing it, and it's like, oh wow, okay, you're actually extremely, dude, you're extremely talented world builder. So this works out well. Yeah,
And yeah, I mean, without more nuance or whatever into the story, like things kind of cascaded from there, and as things kind of want to happen and in this project, like things also naturally fell where they fell, I guess. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that. It's yeah, no, it was an interesting experience. Like if you had come to me before my conversation with Shawn and asked me, would you, given your perception of your own level of skill, ever in your life conceive that you'd be working on an MMORPG? And I would have probably laughed you out of the house. You know what I'm saying? Like to me, it's not an intuitive thought. I thought I was going to sort of just be a little hobbyist illustrator kind of thing and maybe get published in a couple of books. Like I didn't have a vision for my art direction back then, nor any kind of career progression. But the interesting thing for me here is, and I have no problem sharing this with you guys as well. Maybe Shawn can pipe in on it as well. So I was doing work on and off with M for a while, but only really slipped. It only really became kind of a religious part of my day over the last month. And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of, you know, ask yourself the right questions, confront some hard truths, make a decision and a commitment, and then build the habit first. And then, just decide what's more important and what's not and kind of slip into it. Just do it basically, right? And that's kind of what it came to, because I think my output over the last month trumps, I think, a lot of what I'd done earlier, like by leaps and bounds. I think just in
yeah.
terms of your hours kind of committed to M&M. So it's just kind of happened that way, and I certainly do feel a lot more. Well, what's the right word for this? I feel a sense of ownership over the project, I guess, and that needed time to happen as well. You know what I mean? Like I'm more vested in M&M now. You know what I mean? and invested in it as a project and what I can contribute to it in my, in working with the team and seeing it kind of come through. So, if I think the romanticized notion that, hey, get a foot through the front door and then it's all kind of like, rainbows and sunshine is not actually accurate either. It's not the truth. There was an easing in and there were teething issues and figuring stuff out and stuff like that. And not in terms of like getting along with the team or having, doubts on the direction of the project or anything like that. Not in that. I'm talking about purely as somebody who is a self-professed jack of all trades and master of none, right? Like I know a lot about many things, but I'm not a master at any one thing. And it took me a lot of time to come to that realization that I was spreading myself a little too thin by having my fingers in too many pies. So it's time to hunker down and decide what are the things in my life, given my current, living and working circumstances, are important. And then marry them. Marry them zealously and to the exclusion of any other little temptations that might come in the way. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how it ended up working out. So that kind of took us full circle back to the earlier points and what have you. I apologize for that segue, Sean.
No,
But,
not at all. I mean, it's the thing the other thing I think I've said, a few times, and sometimes it's just because I'm trying to be lazy or whatever, but it's a reminder that this is a grind. Like if this was a sprint, and we've tried to honestly design this situation as much as possible with this in mind. It goes back to if somebody gave us a bag of cash, that without a doubt would be helpful, and I think would be cool to be able to do for some people or whatever. But there's always conditions, and so now we have a runway, and now it's a situation where if we need to take our time or grind or something like that at different points, we don't have that option, and who knows what decisions we would have made or who'd be on the team or whatever 6 months ago or 5 months ago or whatever if we had a specific deadline. And so I see this as something where it's a constant press forward. And part of my role too is finding good people and trying to convince them to be a part of the process, and then in some cases following up with people and going like, hey, we spoke a month ago, what's your situation like now? Or we spoke 3 months ago, what's your situation like now? Like, it's my belief that you provide value to the team, you fit in a certain way. Let's do this. Like that same process of, I mentioned earlier, of like calling the random skate parks to get information. I spend not a huge amount of time, but I do spend an amount of time constantly sourcing. If I think we have a need, or if I think there's going to be a change, or if I think that something's up, I'm constantly trying to find, all right, who's the person that may fit this need? Cool. And then once we hit somebody that's, and I can say this about all the people on our team, right? Like, if there's somebody that we look at and we're like, this person's a good fit, or if, not to sound egotistic or whatever, but if I look at it, I think this person would be really good for us, then, part of my job is just trying to make that happen, and then trying to keep them going. And we're going to be at this for quite a while. It is a grind. It's a marathon. So, yeah. And Ham is one of those people. Cool. We have just hit 11 o'clock.
You mean 1 a.m.?
1 a.m. in your time in Bahrain. Yeah, dude, I don't know how you do it. So you know what?
For the cause.
Ham is going to be around. I would love to do more of this type of thing with the team. Get more folks up here and talking. Let us know how you felt about this in Discord. Ham will be able to see stuff in Discord. Yeah, it's crazy. Somebody mentioned earlier that we're a completely remote team. None of us have ever met any of the others in real life, right? And so it's cool that folks can see each other. I'd like to get more of the team on. I'd like to have more of the team at once to answer different things. So we'll be doing this more regularly. Get in our Discord if you've got questions. If you've got feedback of any sort, whatever. Yeah, hit us up. Like I said, join the mailing list. You'll be seeing more and more of Ham's work as we go as well. Cool. I don't know. Ham, any closing words?
Just a couple, actually, if you don't mind. First of all, thanks everybody for thank you, Shawn, for having me on your stream. Actually, it's really cool to be here and to get to kind of talk about all the stuff that we've been working on that we've been excited about, but also to address some of these even off-topic things, with the viewers. It's really, really awesome to kind of. I guess it's awesome to know that we're not very different. You know what I'm saying? I think we all go through those same emotional states, and so some of you asked if you wanted if we could have a chat about world building. I mean, if you guys reach out on Discord, I have no problem putting some time aside to talk about it, or maybe do an audio or video call or something like that and hear your ideas out. Be happy to help when we can sync up our schedules. And I have an interesting idea, Shawn. I'm gonna throw a curveball if you don't mind.
Okay.
If I were to do a stream for a lot, like something short, like let's say an hour or an hour and a half, just to have an engagement-based world building exercise to see what kind of idea we could come up with. And it's going to be completely random and kind of, viewer driven, if you will. And if it's cool enough, what I'm going to do is, of course, I'm going to create the guidelines for it, and we'll have you and walk you guys through the process just to sort of show you a little bit about what structured world building feels like, through my eyes anyway, and I can share it with you. But if the end result ends up really, really cool, maybe I can kind of pitch it to Shawn and see if it's something he'd consider worthy of M&M. And then that way you guys get your thumbprint on it if it's awesome. So how's that for a carrot on a stick? What do you guys?
You would pitch it to the team. That one I think you just take into the team. I would hate to seem like the only arbiter of such a thing, but yeah, I think that sort of thing would be really cool. And we've discussed some other ideas. And we'll be talking with the team and kind of see how that goes. And also, Ham is a wonderful speaker. He's a great guy. I've been talking to Ham. I've been like, you should be streaming, dude. So if you like seeing Ham, if you like talking to Ham, if you would like a Ham stream, and this could be one of the things that happens there. Be sure, let us know in Discord. Let Ham know, and I'll keep pushing them.
Thank you.
If they let me stream, he's a shoo-in, right? Like
that actually looks like some people think it's an awesome idea, Shawn. We should give it a shot. Cool. We should give this one a shot. Why not? Why not? Let's see. But yeah, I do hope to hear from you guys on Discord. Again, happily. Oh, but by the way, just in case you guys, just in case this slips by you, I go by the moniker Geed. What do you call it on Discord? And if any of you guys want to check out my Instagram page or my art or anything like that, you'll find it at Art of Geed. So maybe I'll just punch it into the text actually really quick. But the only reason I brought that up is, that's kind of where it came from, and that's the moniker I use on Discord. So I'm sure we can. There you go. There you go. So yeah, that's if you guys want to hit me up directly, if you have any world building questions or just want to, chew the fat, you know what I'm saying? Like, happy to hear from you.
Cool. Badass, dude. And apologies if I led us too far astray on some of the non-lore stuff. We'll be talking more lore in coming months, so I'll keep it more focused. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you Tuesday if I don't see you in Discord first. And yeah, thanks, Ham. It was super cool. I'm glad you did it.
Thank you. Bye all.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye, everybody.